your money, your taxes, your truck, and your road to success in the trucking industry. This is Trucking Business and Beyond, the show that puts the money where it belongs, back in your pocket.
Good morning, you beautiful bunch of fuckers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Monday, June 24th. We are here live. We have a free-for-all today. Brent will not be joining me for a market update today or anything else. Brent is on vacation. So we've got a free-for-all here in the beginning. Jump in and join us. Those phone lines are open right now. I'll get to calls as soon as they start coming in. You can hit that call now button on your app, or if you're watching on the live stream, you can hit 855-950-3835 on your phone. That'll get you in here as well. And like I say, we'll get to those calls as soon as they start coming in. I have some things I want to talk about, but basically just waiting for calls. At the bottom of the hour, I will be joined by a guest from a company called Relay Payments. We're going to talk a little bit about fuel card fraud. We've been hearing a lot about freight fraud, double brokering, companies stealing loads, all kinds of fraud in freight itself. We haven't really spent a lot of time on fuel card fraud. That seems to be growing. I have not done any research on this topic at all, so this is my my first stab at this. We've got somebody on to talk about that. So that'll be at the bottom of the hour. Jump in and join us. All right, I've got a couple things I want to talk about. Where do I want to start here? Let's do this one. I talked a little bit about this, I think, on Friday. And I've talked a lot about this in general, but this is a very specific case. So I talked on Friday about the car dealerships that use a certain software to run their business. CDK Global is this company, and the software that they run is a lot like the software we might run in trucking. We would refer to ours as a TMS, a transportation management system. Carriers use a TMS, brokers use TMS. There is one really big one in the industry. It's been around a long, long time. A lot of carriers use it. That's the problem here, and that's what happened here. All of these companies using the same software. So in trucking, it's McLeod. I mean, you even see it. I've seen signs on trucks. You know, this company runs on McLeod. I've met the owner of McLeod. They've been around a long, long time. Great software. But anytime you have one software program being used by lots of people or lots of companies, it is a much bigger target. I've talked about this, that people try so hard to protect themselves on the internet. And I'm not going to say you shouldn't worry about it. You should. You should be careful. You should understand phishing scams and all kinds of other things. But for the most part, people are not coming after your individual credit card online. They're not trying to hack into your computer to get access to your bank account. The reason they're not is because it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of skill. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. And there's just no return on trying to do it to one person at a time. Instead, they do what they're doing here. They go after big companies, so instead of trying to hack your login to your bank account through your computer, they go and hack the bank's computer and they get access to everybody's account. Or they hack any company that accepts credit cards and they get access to thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of credit cards all at once. I don't know what this attack was all about. There's there are a couple clues here. The reason I'm talking about it again today, though, is because this is still not fixed, and they don't expect it to be fixed for several more days. So it looks like there are car dealers who are almost shut down and have been for about a week. Now, I heard some people say, well, it's not as bad as you make it sound. I was at my car dealer. They had some problems. They used the software, but they were still able to get my car in for service or whatever it might be. And that could be the case. So just like a TMS, these software programs come in modules. So if you're a trucking company and you want a TMS, you can get a TMS module for dispatch. If you have owner-operators, you could add another module for owner-operator settlements. You could add a module for fuel tax. You can add a module for managing your employees. I forgot the term for that. So there's lots of, you can get one for payroll. You can get, HR was what I was thinking of. There are lots and lots of different modules. And depending on your size and what you need, you just add those modules. So there might be some companies only using a very basic version of this and it didn't affect them as much. But anybody using this, if you know any software program, we run on tons of them, if they go down, you're just kind of screwed. You build certain business practices around these software programs, and when they go down, it's not easy to recreate whatever it is they're doing. And the more of these modules a car dealer would have, the more they would be affected by this. It sounds like the big dealers that ran the full suite of the software are almost not able to do business right now. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. That is becoming more common, and I don't think it's going to stop. So keep in mind that when you're out traveling, these types of disruptions could affect you. If they hack credit card systems, bank systems, you may not be able to get access to your money. Keep some cash. A couple $1,000s would not be a bad idea. The farther away from home you travel, the bigger that number probably should be. If you're traveling all 48 states and you're that far away from home at times, I would just make sure you've got cash. And of course, you should have some water and some food and those other things we talk about to be prepared. All right, what else did I have? Here's another trucking company bit the dust. 500 truck drivers. Did I see something about, seems to me like I saw that they had a lot more. Okay, 2,000 truck drivers, warehouse, dock workers, and office personnel. This company was out of Humble, Texas. U.S. Logistics Solutions, formerly Forward Air Solutions. Now, is this the Forward Air I'm thinking of? I don't remember them ever being called Forward Air Solutions, but I'd have to go back and look. I mean, way back when, I had a pretty close relationship with Forward Air. For about a year, I knew the CEO. He moved on to other things. I don't know if this would be them or not. I'm going to have to go check. Maybe somebody knows. If you know, send me a text. Said 500 trucks, or 500 truck drivers, but about 2,000 employees total. They shut their doors. I mean, this isn't a restructuring. This is a total bankruptcy, and they are closed. Now, this company had been bought by a management company, an investment company, and a private equity company is what it really is. And there are cases where private equity companies kind of buy these companies, create a bunch of debt, take a bunch of bonuses, and then bankrupt the company. It does happen. I don't think that was the whole case here. I don't think this company would be closing its doors except for what's happened with rates in the last couple of years. And that's becoming more and more common. But we're also seeing more new entries into trucking authority as well. So there's some, like we've been saying for a while, there are some strange things going on. Couple things I'm looking at health-wise, doing some more research on health. There seems to be some indication that one of the reasons, let me choose oxalates. One of the reasons we don't seem to be handling oxalates well, and they cause all kinds of health issues, the most common being kidney stones or gallstones, but joint pain like gout, we've talked about a lot. We did an entire mini series on oxalates. It turns out that this might be a gut issue, that we have lost all the diversity in our gut microbiome. We've talked a lot about this. We don't understand this completely, but it looks like there were hunter-gatherer tribes that consumed a lot of oxalates and didn't have an issue with it. And they believe it's because their gut microbiome could clear them. That may be the issue with some of our other plant foods as well. Maybe that's why we're not tolerating plant foods well. We had Ken Berry on last week. Dr. Berry is a big proponent of pure carnivore. And the more sick you are, the more strict you should be on a keto or carnivore diet. And we know we get great results with that. We also know that after now 9, almost 10 years of doing it, that the one downside I've talked about is that I'm not sleeping well. And the more hardcore carnivore or keto I eat, the less I sleep. I've talked about performing at a really high level, but not being able to sustain it. Now, I know some people that sustain pure carnivore for long periods of time, and they seem to thrive under it. I thrive, but I can't do it for long. And the explanation is that on these, a heavy carnivore keto diet, our cortisol levels increase. And there is some evidence of that. And cortisol would help us perform better, but would also really interfere with our sleep. So that's why you see Dr. Mercolis talked about it, Dave Asprey, Paul Saladino, there's a couple others that have added rice and fruit and honey to go back to more carbs. But we know that the carbs themselves can cause problems. The fructose can cause problems. So I'm not exactly sure where I fall on this yet. I will always recommend the carnivore diet in the very beginning, no doubt. And again, the sicker you are, the more strict you do a keto or carnivore diet, the better your results are going to be. If there's a way to work back into higher carbs and then be healthier overall, I'm going to keep trying and we'll see what happens. One more thing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, then I'm going to get to some calls. So go ahead and line them up. 855-950-3835 or hit that call now button on your app. We'll also keep an eye on chat. If you've got something you want to ask and you're in one of the chat rooms, go ahead and do that. I was talking about AI quite a bit for a while. Then I've backed off because not a lot's changing really. Well, there is, but it's kind of hard to talk about. There are things going on in the background. A lot of things probably happening with AI that we're not even aware of yet. Here's one of the biggest problems I'm seeing with AI. A lot of people already assume when they do searches and they read, 3 or 4 headlines or they read a couple articles, they assume that must be the truth. Well, it was on the internet, it must be true. We know how ridiculous that can be. But I believe that many more people believe that the answers we get from AI are supposed to be correct. They're not. And from what I can see, I'm not sure if AI is ever going to be correct. And here's why. AI has to get its information from somewhere. It can learn. That is the difference between AI and just search technology. AI learns. I mean, that's really what it is. That's what sets it apart from any other software technology, is that it can get smarter on its own. But it has to have a data set to learn from. And the problem is the data set is primarily media and news. And unfortunately, the media and the news, they just lie. They just outright lie about so many things. The big one I'm talking about is health. We know that big pharma controls advertising, not just a little. They control advertising a lot across all forms of media. TV, they have got locked up. Online, they've got locked up. They have a huge influence even in social media by creating what looks like grassroots groups to help people with certain conditions. And then it looks like some, stay-at-home mom created this whole group to help people with anxiety. And the group grows and it gets popular and it gets big, and pretty soon that becomes the advice we're supposed to take from that group. But it turns out it was never started by some stay-at-home mom or some, guy doing a blog in the evenings. It was started by big pharma. They make it look like they're grassroots groups. They're just not. So they are controlling when it comes to health and food and nutrition. That is one area for sure that I'm very familiar with, that AI is going to give you the same wrong answers that people have been giving you about nutrition forever. I just experimented again this morning. AI is getting better. It's getting more sophisticated. I'm trying new tools. Like I've said before, I wish it would all just go away, but it's not going to, so I better at least understand it. And if I'm going to have to deal with the downsides, I'm going to try to make some upsides out of it. So we do use AI here when it makes sense. But, just asking AI again, is a carnivore diet healthy? And here's what you get, exactly what Big Pharma wants you to see in big food. Well, there are problems with carnivore diets. You could have nutrient deficiencies. My God, in the standard American diet, we have so many nutrient deficiencies, it's not even funny. And we have an overload of some nutrients, which isn't good either. Lack of fiber. Please, I wish we could get through the whole fiber thing. I had digestive issues my whole life, and all I ever heard was, well, you need more fiber. I'm taking more fiber. Well, then you must need more water with the fiber. No, I'm drinking lots of water. Well, you must need to move more. Yeah, I've done all the things they say should fix our digestive issues, and fiber does not fix it. What finally fixed my digestive issues was a lack of fiber. The less fiber I eat, the better my digestion seems to work. Cardiovascular health concerns. This is all the stuff that AI brings up about the carnivore diet. This is right out of Big Pharma's playbook. There are no cardiovascular health concerns with a keto or carnivore diet, none whatsoever. Potential kidney strain. No, we've debunked that one many, many times. Lack of plant-based benefits. Yeah, what benefits? Sustainability and practicality. The carnivore diet is extremely restrictive. Well, they finally got that one right, and may be difficult to maintain long term. It may be, but it's also not difficult because people get such good results. It also limits social eating situations and food variety. I'll agree with them on food variety. Social eating situations, it's not hard to eat meat. If I'm going to somebody's party and they're vegans, I'm not planning on eating, or actually I can eat. I mean, it's not that I don't eat plant foods. If they don't have any of the junk in them that many plant foods do, I would probably eat them at a party. But really, the point here isn't the points. The point is that AI gives you all the exact same answers about this topic that we are currently getting, and they're all wrong, and they're all lies, and that's what keeps us sick. AI is not fixing those kind of things. I could also, I'm going to do kind of a dive into what kind of answers you get from AI on financial planning. My guess is that's going to be a bunch of garbage too. All right, let's get to some phone calls. I do have a guest coming up here quickly, so let me get to a couple calls first. Let's go to Toronto. Jeremy, welcome.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Good. What's on your mind?
I called you last Monday. I had lost oil pressure. My truck had shut down. I had told you that I was going to get an oil sample, and I got the oil sample back, and so I sent it to you.
Yeah, and you were a little concerned about bearings, right?
Yeah, I was concerned on if I did any damage to the engine. Basically, it dumped out 7 gallons of oil. I think, I'm not 100% sure, that it dumped it out rapidly. It wasn't over, hundreds and hundreds of miles. It was the oil filter, the bypass oil filter unscrewed itself in New York.
Got it.
And then it dumped 7 gallons out. And so my engine shut down just automatically. I didn't shut it down. When it noticed it shut it down. And my concern was, was there damage created, even though I know the manufacturers say, oh, we're shutting the engine down to make sure that there's no damage done to the engine.
No, and they're right. Most of the time on the modern engines, the shutdowns do protect the engine, whether it's overheat, low oil pressure, whatever it are. They're pretty good at shutting down before there's damage, and this is a great example of it. You've got none. I think last week I said we might even have to pull down the pan and look at the bearings. Don't bother. There was no damage done to this engine at all.
Okay, so even though lead went up to 1, that's just nothing?
I have sampled oil out of the bottle that had higher lead content than that.
Okay, all right, good to know.
Yeah.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
You're fine. These wear metals, had you sent me this oil sample, here's one way I can tell you that really there's no problem. Had you sent me this oil sample and told me the engine had a problem and lost all its oil, or if you didn't tell me that, I would have never known. Mm-hmm. I would not be questioning anything on the sample. I wouldn't be digging deeper. I'd look at it and go, nope, really normal sample, carry on.
Okay. All right. Well, glad to hear it. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call. Yeah, that and we call some of these things babysitters. They're there to protect us from our own. Really, though, if you had I lost an engine like this once, and I talked about it. It was like my worst summer ever in trucking. I had a summer where just everything went wrong. It's when I ended up selling most of my trucks and going back to a couple and starting over. I lost 3 engines in the same year. One of them was scheduled to have an in-frame, so that one we at least had budgeted for. One overheated. And the 2 that I lost were both cats, by the way. I haven't really run a lot of cats since. And there's nothing wrong with them. I just had a really bad experience. One overheated. It was kind of driver error. They should have caught it sooner, but they didn't. The other one, our own mechanic didn't put a drain plug in tight enough. Plug came out, oil dumped, no babysitters back then on those engines. And we lost that engine as well. These do really work well. Almost always they will shut down before any damage is done at all. All right, let's go to Dallas. Scott, welcome.
Hey, Kevin. Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Hey, I wanted to some of the AI stuff that you're talking about. I want to challenge you to get some AI experts on the show, so that the guys in this industry who are not able to dive really deep into artificial intelligence and what it can offer, a firsthand ear at what's happening, because some of the claims that you make, and I'm from the software industry related to transportation and logistics and using IA from a user experience perspective. Some of the claims that you make are very broad. That comments like, "I don't know if AI will ever get it right," or the information we're getting back is garbage.
Of course they're
May be
broad.
true, but right.
That's
But
all
there
we've
are
got
other
right now.
cases where there is valuable information out there, and I would challenge you to not be the middleman on something like this, because I'm not an expert, and you are not an expert. So get an expert on, and have that expert. Episode 2156 on the Rogan Show, the Harris brothers from Gladstone. Listen to that episode. Those guys know their stuff. They lay it out. It
You
makes it easy to hear, easy to consume, and it also will scare the mess out of you at what AI is
so
capable of. But responsibility in AI,
well,
and
hold
why
on,
certain
Scott.
things
Scott,
are
hold on.
happening the way they're
Well,
happening, and
well,
that just it's
maybe you haven't
frustrating to
heard me.
hear these broad generalizations that are being made on the show. And I know you don't want to do that, but
No, I do want to
honestly,
do
you
that.
are doing that.
I
Yeah.
just told you I want to do that. I'm doing it on purpose. And maybe you haven't heard
Why?
me
Is
make.
that
Well,
more
hold
like
on.
fear mongering,
Well,
Kevin?
hold on.
I mean, let
Maybe
the
you
truck
haven't
drivers
heard
don't
me.
have the time
Can you let me
to
talk for a
go in and
second,
do
Scott?
the research.
Don't
I
make
know,
me.
Kevin. Listen, I'm not.
No, I'm going to mute you. Let me finish a sentence. I let you talk. What I think you're missing is maybe you haven't heard me talk about this, because I've said all the things you just said. I've said it has lots of power to do good things. I've said we use it here in our office over and over and over. We'll continue to use it. I've said all of those things. But the broad generalizations are true. Much of what you get in really important areas is garbage, total garbage. And it is strengthening what people believe. And the example I just gave is a good one. You can't get good nutritional information out of AI. And why not? Because all the data that AI learns from is garbage. I've talked about this.
Kevin,
Go ahead.
unmute me.
I did. Go
You.
ahead.
I know you did. That's what's great about you, Kevin. Listen, one question: are you an expert on AI?
No. But let me say this.
Okay, that's just it. Just swallow that one,
Let me
Kevin. You're
finish
not an
my
expert. Bring in
sentence,
some.
Scott. Let me finish. No, I'm not an expert. I have read experts. I've listened to experts. I've been in seminars with experts. I don't trust the experts yet. I can't figure out who the experts really are. I can't figure out who. And Scott, I did not hang up on you, by the way. I just realized the call is gone. If you want to call back, Scott, I will get you back on. In fact, we might call you back. I didn't hang up. I don't know what happened. I didn't mute you again. I didn't put you on hold. Your call disappeared. But you got to let me finish my sentence. You got to let me talk. I don't know how to trust experts yet. So I don't want to bring on experts. Yeah, Angie, if you could, or who's screening today? Yes, I think it's Chelsea. Call them back. I'm not going to bring on somebody and validify their position when I don't know enough yet who to trust. So I am generalizing a lot, and I'm going to continue to generalize a lot. I have to. I don't really think that AI experts are going to help us much. What I mean by that is there are people who are experts on AI itself, the technology. I can't get my head around how AI works and how machines can learn things. I've tried. I can't get my head around it enough to explain it to anybody else. What I have tried to get my head around is how AI will be used specifically. So I have sought out experts for, like you just said, you work in software and logistics. I've sought out experts on how AI is going to affect logistics. And we're all over the board. We're too early into this. You know, we talk about the gut microbiome and how early we are and how much we don't know. We know way more about the gut microbiome than we know about what AI is going to do. When you said, You started to say the right thing, but you were talking over me. I am afraid of AI. And when you say responsible use, that's what scares me. I can use it responsibly. You can use it responsibly. What stops people from using it irresponsibly? Nothing. And then AI can learn
Hello?
on its own, and it might take over on us. There's so many things here. So yes, I'm going to continue to make broad generalizations, but I also gave a very specific example of I've asked AI this question 20 different ways. I've asked it of multiple AI systems, and I always get garbage back. And then I finally realized why. Because again, this is where we have to understand that, and this is my understanding, AI has to have a data set to learn from. And when I look at the data that's available on two areas that I am really familiar with, so I don't need to be an expert on AI. I understand nutrition, I understand financial planning. And so far, the information you get from those two areas are garbage. So Scott, go ahead. Scott?
Scott, you got me?
Yep, you're there. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not sure where we lost our connection.
You had just said something about responsible use of AI. And my response to that was that you just hit it on the head. How do you ever enforce responsible use of AI? It's already out in the wild, and that's just going to continue to grow. How do you ever control that and make sure only people use it responsibly?
So why are we worried about that? You and me and you, Kevin. I mean, what my concern is putting such a awesome, great device and tool in the hands of everybody who can use it. So, I was able to catch some of the conversation after our phone call disconnected, and you said you made a couple comments about bringing in experts, and you don't trust experts in AI. Well, so what defines? This is rhetorical. What defines an expert for you? Because do I care, or do your users or listeners care? They do, but don't be the middleman of who's deciding what an expert is. If you,
well,
these
Scott, I have to be.
2156, I'm not sure if that came up. Wait, let me finish this real quick, Kevin. Please.
All right.
Please let me finish. Okay. Episode 2156, I would urge everybody to listen to Rogan on this one. The Harris brothers from Gladstone, they are, in my opinion, experts. So listen to that, or let everyone else listen, and then get these guys on and just open the show and let people call in and ask these guys questions about what we out here in the world, including yourself, because none of us are experts. We haven't started companies. We're not CEOs and CTOs of AI-driven companies. Let that message come from them, just like Salatin. Anybody that we listen to that you deem an expert, right, or the industry deems an expert, let us make up our own minds on what we want to take as listening to your show, what we want to take from that person.
Let me
and
explain.
then
Let me explain.
Let us ask our own questions.
Let me explain that. You just mentioned Joel Salatin. We could talk about Dr. Wolfson. We could talk about Joel Morrow and fuel mileage, or all the people
Sure.
I do bring on the show. Here's the big difference, and I don't think you're understanding this. I know enough about those topics. I know a lot about those topics. I've studied fuel mileage for 30 years. You can't pull something over me on fuel mileage. I know who the experts are. I need to talk to them for 5 minutes, and I know who has good information and who doesn't. Nutrition, same thing. Regenerative farming, the topics I cover. I did not talk about nutrition for over a year after we started a nutrition podcast, because I said, I'm not talking about this until I know what the hell I'm talking about. And I read 100 books on nutrition. And I went through a 9-month course on nutrition before I would say, I'll bring on the experts now, we can talk about nutrition. I'm not ready to do that with AI. But until I'm ready to do it, I don't know who the experts are that I trust. If they want to go listen to the Rogan episode, go listen to it. Doesn't have to be on my show. It already exists. There's plenty of experts,
I'm
or
talking
there's
about
plenty
how
of shows.
yeah,
You're not
Kevin, how
understanding,
would
Scott.
you
I can't.
deliver what these guys are saying in the transportation world? And I'm going to pull something on you here. What you just said is you're not ready to bring on certain types of content until you said you spent a year. But in the past, you've also said, and I feel for your developers of your app, you said, I just throw them things and say, I want it. I don't even tell them. I mean, with the app and the technical issues, do the same with your technical issues. Why don't you work on that on the side instead of throwing it right in front of everybody? And every day is a problem and a heartache and we're testing things and doing this. That's how you get things done. And you're doing it in software.
Because I have
But
no
why
choice.
don't you do it with it's just
I have no
a
choice.
conversation? You
Because
have a conversation with these guys, and
Scott, you're not
what you're
getting
saying
it.
is you're not
You're
ready
not
to believe
getting
what
it.
something is. But
When somebody
what
comes
do
on
we
my
want?
show, people will look at them as an expert that I chose, and they will trust that. And I can't tell them you can trust this person because I don't know enough to tell anybody who you can trust and who you can't. And I'm not bringing people on my show until I'm more comfortable. Maybe it wouldn't take me a year, but it would take me time to really dig into this and figure out who's on the right track. I don't even know if I could say who's right yet because I don't think we understand what this is going to do to our world. But let me give you some other piece here that maybe it'll help you understand why I don't want to go down this road. And eventually I probably will, but we'll see. One of my topics today, I didn't get started on it because I thought we were having a guest, but I'm not sure where our guest is, was going to be how I think all technology has been really bad for human beings. And I am now working on ways to make technology much less a part of my life. Because of all the work I've done on stress and sleep and all the other issues we still have around health, no matter how good your diet is, it all comes back to technology causing too much stress in our lives. And it is becoming almost impossible to avoid. Unless you want to do what I just did for the weekend, and that's why I know this stuff works. On my weekends, I completely get away from technology. Computers get turned off, phone gets turned off. I go outside and I immediately start to feel better. And the longer I do it, the better I feel. And yeah, we're in a world where if you're going to avoid technology, you might as well just go out and live in the woods. I get that. But I also don't have to keep going down the path of more and more technology that is making us less and less happy, healthy, everything else. I am no longer a fan of all this technology. Will I be able to turn it around? Hell no. We're going down this road. Nothing's going to slow it down. But I can make a difference in my life. So there's two big reasons. One, every new technology has made things worse for human beings. The computer itself was bad for us. Phones are really bad for us. Social media is a disaster for human beings. And now AI is, to me, seems like it will probably be the worst one of all.
Okay, so let me challenge you something, and this comes from my area of expertise, and that's user experience design, product development in a software and app driven world. That's what I do. And it's for logistics and it's for transportation. I worked for 6 years at Cox Automotive and 4 years at Central Dispatch. I'm not the type of designer that just goes on what I think is right or what business people tell me what they want. I'm the type of driver that drives to MATS every year and uses Mannheim Auto Auction and Central Dispatch and all of the products that are under Cox Automotive to get to MATS and interview people, ride with the drivers, watch them use the software, and still never claim, as much as I learn and how much I understand about my users and how they're using software, never claim to ever know a percentage of what truck drivers go through. So how do I find out? I ask them. Here's my challenge. Ask the tribe. Ask everybody else. Would you be okay if someone came in and it was just a free for all and we ask questions, a learning? That's how innovation happens, and from my perspective. No opinions, right? Because everybody's got one, but just open the doors and let somebody come in that is an AI expert or works for one of these companies, and ask the customers, your users, your listeners, if they would like that.
No.
You have the stats, and
No.
and go from there. Let them
No.
decide what they want from you,
No.
and that's going to guide you in a direction where you might offer something more than you're offering now.
No.
Some freedom of they're using their own ears to hear something. I mean, what you offer could be blind. There's blinders on it. You've picked out content you think is right.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Ask your customers.
It's my show. I've
asked customers. Your users.
I don't like to ask customers.
Ask your users.
I don't like
do
to
a
ask
survey.
users.
Have them.
Scott, do you listen to the words
surveys
I say?
work, and I've heard you don't like them. I know you don't like them. You just like to do what you want to do. But dude,
yes,
open it up. Come on, man.
No, you're not listening to the words I'm saying. I'm telling you the truth, and you won't believe me. I don't want to ask my listeners.
Kevin, you're not an expert.
I don't care.
I'm doing the same thing you are. Why would I trust you? You are not an expert on AI. You're just
Scott, don't trust
foaming
me.
at the mouth.
Don't trust me then. I'm not asking you to trust me.
That's not what I'm saying. You're missing the point, Kevin.
No,
you're going
it
from it to your world, and I get it. You get to open the show and call everybody a fucker, which is dumb.
It's my world.
Open it up to your users, your listeners. Ask them. Quit asking yourself.
Scott, you've criticized my show, my software, what I say.
It's so. I know. Open it up. I know it's your world, Kevin, but open it up. What do your users and your listeners want? You just don't do that.
Scott,
it's very frustrating. When I first started listening to you, you were like the top of. You were my everyday for 7-8 years.
When you say
and then I
open
stopped
it up,
because you were the guy that would never let anybody on Sirius call in and use their handle.
No,
you didn't
I
think
won't.
it was professional, but now you handled everybody. You call them fuckers. Come on, man.
Scott, if you want to know,
go one way. Quit going every way.
Wait, can you let me talk?
Seriously,
can you let me talk? If you want to know,
Kevin, I love you, man, but you're frustrating as hell, dude.
The whole Fokker thing, that came from the listeners. So when you say ask,
I know where it came from, but it didn't come from all listeners. I mean, it's just silly.
Nothing will ever come from all listeners. That's my point. If I do a survey,
but you won't even try. It comes from a couple listeners.
You don't know what I've tried.
And then you do it.
You don't know what
Or you do it because you think it's right.
Here's the answer.
I was a part of the tribe.
Let me help you with your mental health.
Have an expert on AI in, Kevin.
No.
It'll be fun, man.
No.
It'll be fun.
Not doing it.
Everyone will love it.
Not doing it.
Okay, don't do it. Let your listeners not see the value in having an expert while you do your homework. Go ahead.
Let me help you with your mental health.
Thanks, Kevin.
This is my show.
Appreciate you, bud.
This is my world, and I am a dictator. This is not a democracy. This is not a constitutional republic. My show is a dictatorship. I do exactly what I want on my show. And you know what? It works. Works for me, works for the listeners, works for the tribe, and the people that don't like it. There's lots of other shows to go listen to. Go listen to them. When you said open it up, I'm going to challenge you. Find a talk show that covers anywhere near the number of topics I cover. Maybe Joe Rogan. Very few people out there open things up and talk about all the topics I talk about. But I'm pretty clear. I'm not going to talk about a topic I don't know a lot about. And right now, I don't want to know more about AI. I'm doing my own homework in the background. I'm bringing my results. Yes, I'm generalizing. I will continue to. So if what I talk about or my opening line, or if all that stuff bothers you so much, stop listening. Really. It's just not worth it to stress yourself out over this. And I'm trying to tell you the truth and you won't believe me. I'm not changing the way I do things. It's my show. I like my show. I like what I get to do every day. And as long as people keep listening, and they are, that's all I care about. If somebody came to me and they could prove that I would have 10 times more listeners if I just did what you said, I still wouldn't do it. I don't care if I have 10 times more listeners. I like my day. I like my job. I like my business. And I love my show. I'm not changing it. Let's go to Arizona. Ernesto, welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Kevin? Good morning. Quite the spectacle before me, man.
Yeah, it's a good way to kick off a Monday.
that was nice. Well, I don't have a problem with AI. At least I don't think I have any yet. So you're free and clear of that debate with me.
Good. Okay.
So the reason for my call, Kevin, is I've always wondered about my numbers with the truck, man. I've had an idea, but I've never had like the an expert like yourself kind of that sit down and talking about it. Would you mind helping me getting to the bottom on these numbers
Sure.
for myself?
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Okay. Just top of my head, like, what do you need like right off the bat? Like, I'm assuming miles per gallon, like monthly expenses on
So
yard and insurance and all that good stuff, correct?
Yeah. Let's start with this. How are you doing your accounting?
I do it all by hand. I do it all myself. I don't use like a TMS program or anything like that. I basically myself notepad and a calculator.
Okay. So I'll just ask, and if you have this number, let's start there. Do you calculate revenue per mile on all miles traveled?
Yes.
What's that number?
So I made a post on Twitter here, going back. I was on the road for about 14 or 15 days here this past week, and I was at 366 a mile all miles. It was a really good week. Like, I mean, I'm talking probably the best outing I've had in so far this past couple weeks.
So one of the reasons you should at least learn how to write some spreadsheets is you could save yourself a tremendous amount of time and have much better information than doing it by hand. I love when people do it by hand in the beginning because it helps them understand what it is they're calculating, and you get it better if you do it by hand. But here's the problem. This 366 over a 14-day period is almost worthless information. It's too short, and you just admitted yourself. We're cherry picking. It was a great. So, what is it for this year to date? And if you have to go back to your calculator, and you can go ahead and do it, this is where spreadsheets or profit gauges comes in, because you have to put in data to calculate this number for 14 days. Well, once I put the data into profit gauges or a spreadsheet, then the spreadsheet will constantly recalculate for me, and I don't have to keep going back and saying, okay, now I want to know 6 months. Oh, well, I want to know last month. I want to compare it to last year. You will waste hours on a calculator trying to do that. So I'm glad you understand it, but I would really encourage you to step up to spreadsheets or software or something.
Right, there's a method for me to do it. Obviously, I would go back on my ELD and look at the miles so far this year, and then obviously the gross revenue that I've had so far this year. Right. I mean, there's a way for me to find out. Right. But honestly, the reason for my phone call is more of like the cost per mile for me to operate the truck, not on the revenue itself. I know on revenue-wise, I'm doing, in my opinion, far above average than market dictates. Okay. Especially being in the spot market compared to contract freight. So I'm looking for more cost to operate, not, the revenue part. I think I got it down pretty good.
Okay. Then,
personally.
All right. So either year to date or lifetime or, some bigger, longer period of time, what is your fuel cost per mile?
Fuel cost per mile. So I got a truck in December. I got a 2017 Western Star with a DD15, and that was coming from a Caterpillar C15 W900.
Okay.
So you can already tell that
You're right.
I'm loving this thing so far this year.
I'll bet.
I'm averaging around 8 miles per gallon. I can go up, I can touch the nines, somewhere in the nines, depending on
Excellent.
weight, obviously, and I can be in the mid sevens.
Yeah.
With some heavy stuff,
That's a
especially
good
out here in the
range.
West Coast, going up and down hills. So I just want to shoot, from the hip here and call it an 8 mile per gallon, right down the middle.
So do you calculate it as a cost per mile on all miles?
So what I do, that's the reasoning of me giving you a phone call, because I don't know like the cost per mile necessarily. I'm shooting for the stars on the revenue that way, and try to keep, obviously,
Scott,
the
stop
fuel
that.
expenses and all that low. But
Stop that. Stop being so either hyper focused on revenue or trusting in just make more money and everything will be fine. You need to stop that. In fact, you need to completely stop it and put all of your focus on expenses right now. The revenue is what it is. I mean, give me something you're doing actively right now to increase your revenue.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like an addition by subtraction type of stuff. Obviously, I went out and got a much better fuel efficient equipment.
No, stop. You're confusing things again. I don't want to. We're going back and forth between expense and revenue. We got to expense. That's where the truck came in. That's an expense thing. That's good. I'm glad you're doing that. I want you to do more of that. But you keep going back to revenue. And you even said, I don't need to talk about my revenue because I get better than average. But the minute I said fuel cost, you said, well, I'll just make more money. I just trust in that if I make more money, I'll be okay. And I'm telling you, that's a bad thing to trust in. You've already done whatever work you've done to improve your revenue. You understand the freight and the lanes. You've built good relationships. You had to have to get these kind of numbers. You've done a lot of things right. But I want you to put that same intensity and focus on your expenses now. Revenue, you've got, and what are you going to do if rates just keep coming down? What are you going to do when somebody just takes that freight away from you because they're willing to pull it for $1 less a mile? It's going to happen. The longer this downturn goes on, the more likely we are to lose these good rates we've been somehow holding on to. And if it's not this downturn, the next downturn will hit the rates even harder. So we have to focus on both things, but I really put a much, much bigger focus on expenses because there's more I can do. So if I can't know your cost per mile just by your fuel mileage, because all I would be able to do is calculate a national fuel price average. And then I could tell you, off the top of my head, my guess is your fuel cost per mile is going to be in the high 40-cent range. But you might be buying fuel really smart. Maybe it's lower. Or maybe you're not buying fuel really smart and it's higher. Well, then I know, hey, look, do you have a NASTC fuel card? Do you understand fuel tax? Are you buying your fuel properly? There are strategies that we could save a lot of money. And I want you to focus on those more.
I use RTS I have fuel discounts with RTS. I don't have any trailer and truck payments. Everything's been paid off. My insurance is very low. We're talking like sub $800 a month because obviously the experience. The yard, I do have multiple, equipment. I do that's kind of comparable with my insurance, the yard, and that's something to look forward to in the future investment wise. Just buy a piece of property to get rid of that expense. I've been cost cutting left and right. I never really put it on the microscope to try to get down. I just know kind of what I have to do from a kind of over the top perspective where we can get better at.
I would say right now, you could get better at fuel. That's one for sure, because you don't know your fuel cost per mile. You know your fuel mileage, kind of. So there's one place you could get better. And it's always where we start. It's our biggest expense. anytime we can cut fuel costs, we're going to see improvements. Here's the other thing I like about focusing on fuel. Most things we do to improve fuel economy also lower maintenance costs. They almost always go hand in hand, and those are our two biggest expenses. So I would have you, you've done a lot of things right. There's no doubt about it. I mean, your numbers from what I'm hearing right now, but I would challenge you to have a monthly business report that shows you all these numbers, and then you can stay on track and stay focused on them.
That's the way I do it month to month. I don't have
wait. Then tell me your fuel cost per mile for last month.
Fuel cost per, I would have to sit down and
I know you would. That's my point, Ernesto. I know you would. You could go back and calculate it. I know the data exists for you to go back and calculate it. What I'm telling you is you should just know it right off the top of your head. You should know. I mean, this is one of your.
It's kind of like splitting hairs, because if I'm getting
Ernesto, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back. What is your question for me?
To get kind of cost operating the truck, because I'm not crunching numbers.
But Ernesto, every time I try to give,
but I've never gotten
every time I try to give you a good example of what you should be doing, because I thought that's what you were asking me. But when I just said, you don't know your cost per mile for fuel, then you tell me, oh, well, you're just splitting hairs. Well, that's my advice. I mean, if it's splitting hairs, it's splitting hairs. But that's my advice to you, is to understand your fuel and maintenance costs better than you currently understand them.
Gotcha.
And that's where the next look, $3.66 a mile, even if it was a great week or two, I can't
be a little bit more.
I can't touch that. There's nothing I can do to help you with that. You've already figured it out. You got that going on. Your costs are low. I get that. But you called me to ask me how you could do better. And maybe you are to the point where you have to split hairs.
Ernesto? I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
I was just kind of going through a little month and pass right now.
Got it.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. I was just going through a slight month and pass here. But, hey, man, no, I appreciate it. So, I mean, the obviously taking care of the fuel, that's always the most important expense, and kind of open up that whole maintenance board as well.
Right.
So if you get better fuel mileage, you kind of can, the intervals, obviously the intervals are not going to get any bigger or any longer. It's just going to save on maintenance the better fuel mileage you get.
Well, the things we tend to do, so when we focus on making sure the engine's tuned properly, making sure we have enough airflow with the fleet air filter, making sure we don't have any exhaust restrictions, making sure the overhead is set properly, all of those things will improve fuel mileage. They will also lower maintenance cost. Because when the engine and the whole truck is tuned right, operated right, our emission problems tend to go away, our maintenance cost goes down. So those two tend to go hand in hand. The time and energy we put into improving our fuel mileage also tends to lower our maintenance cost.
Okay. One last question then. I apologize for maybe not having everything in front of me.
That's all right.
Full intention is to have it all in front of me next time. So would it be better to have a monthly, come back to you with like a monthly numbers?
Here's what I really like. And here's why it's hard. Like I said earlier, I love the fact that you just calculate this on paper, because then it tells me you really understand the numbers. The challenge for me is I can look at things many different ways depending on the situation, the operation. So sometimes I might just want to know, okay, tell me last month. Tell me last month compared to that same month last year. Sometimes I want to see that. Well, if you're doing these calculations, I either have to give you a whole list and you've got to go calculate it. You see what I mean? Or sometimes I might say, look, I want to know that number for the lifetime since you've owned this truck. Or I want to know what your fuel cost per mile was during last winter and now what it is during, the spring or the summer. There's so many different ways I'd like to. Sometimes I'll go, in this operation, percentage of revenue is a better indicator than cost per mile. So it's why I wrote my software the way I wrote it. It's why accountants will sometimes look at my software and go, what the hell? This isn't how you do accounting. And I tell people all the time, we broke a whole bunch of rules of accounting. That software, Scott, if you're still listening, everything about our software is written because I like it that way. I don't really ask. Now, we get feedback. We put all kinds of new features in our software because people ask for them. But I have the final say on everything.
Do you think AI would approve of the software, Kevin?
I think it would probably give me maybe a B minus.
All right. It's because you did it your way, man, like the song.
That's it. And I'm upfront and transparent about it, and it's not going to change. That's look, to me, that's what I want to teach other people to do, to live in a way that makes you happy and still brings value to other people. And I don't think Scott could argue, I don't even think he would try, that I've brought lots of value to lots of people. He believes I could bring even more value to more people if I would do things his way. But that's all it is it's just his way. When he says, well, you're just doing things your way. You're right, I am. You're trying to tell me how you would do it. That's fine. Then go do it. But I'm not going to change the way I do things. So my report, the business report in Profit Gauges, has a column for total number. Here's what you spent on fuel. The next column is, here is that fuel cost per mile. The next column is, here is that fuel cost stated as a percentage of revenue. The next cost is, here is that fuel cost as a monthly average. That's all on one page. And we do that for every expense: fuel, maintenance, tolls, truck payment, insurance, everything. And I can just look at that. And then if I need to, if you were using our software, then I could just go into the software and say, well, you only brought me this report, but I could just go into the software myself and compare it to last year at this time. So when I look at numbers, especially for somebody like you, and the reason I say that is because you are down to kind of tweaking now. You've done a lot of the hard work to get all of your numbers, your revenue, your expenses, where they should be. There might not be a whole lot left. Matt is coming up. Matt's the next caller. There is nothing, not one single thing I can tell Matt to help him improve his numbers. Nothing. There's nothing left.
It is what it is at one point, right?
Yeah, he's done it all. He's got one truck. He's maximized every number in every way I can see possible. So you never hear Matt and I really talk about trying to lower his expenses. He just calls in and shares his numbers. You may get to that point. You may be pretty darn close to it already.
I think I'll wait a whole year because, like I said, if you ask me for my numbers going back to last year to this month or like last winter, I was running a W900 with a C15, so it's definitely gonna be
much better,
lopsided.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's something you could do, and it's a good exercise in helping you understand your numbers better. Write a spreadsheet. You could get a 30-day free trial to our software, and you could do everything I'm about to describe on our software for free and not have to pay a penny. Go back in, because you can go backwards in our software. Go back in and put in all your numbers from the time you had the W-9. And then when you get the new truck, just continue, put it, because here's the beauty of our software. You put in all the data, and as long as you put it in the right order, the right dates, and you just do it by the month, Then we could go back and look and say, hey, look, with the W-9, you used to spend this much on fuel and this much on maintenance and this much on insurance, and now look at the number. So once it's in the software, then it's easy for us to make those comparisons. If you have to make those kind of comparisons on a calculator, you're just not going to go do it. It's just too much work.
Okay, copy that.
Give that a shot. And then call back. We'll have all kinds of numbers to talk about.
I'll check it out, man. Thanks for taking the call. Have a good one, okay?
All right. Thanks for the call. All right, Matt, let's talk about how we can lower your costs.
Well, maybe I could buy a new truck and that would bring my maintenance down and my fuel costs down. But, the increase in the insurance and a truck payment kind of balances it out. So the bottom line wouldn't change.
Correct. And that's the beauty of knowing your numbers inside and out.
Yep. So yeah, I could move numbers around, but when it comes down to the bottom line, it doesn't change.
Not going to change much, right? And there's always the risk it could get worse.
Well, yeah, that's the unknown.
Right.
But I talked to a guy this weekend, and we were talking about tires and different stuff and MD alignment type stuff, and told him the mileage I get out of my tires, and he can't even believe it. Doesn't understand how that could even be possible. Well, as you said, as your fuel mileage improves, your maintenance cost goes down.
Right.
Well, I'm one of these 57-mile-an-hour guys.
That's easy on tires.
All premium Michelin tires.
Yep.
I have all my wheel bearings adjusted. My trailer axles have been welded to be supported. I don't get in. I rotate them on a regular. So I have gotten 400,000 miles out of a set of trailer tires, over 300,000 out of a set of steer tires. I don't know my personal record on drive tires, but
it's up
over
there.
3 for sure.
It's up there.
Probably pushing 4.
So I think this is what Ernesto might refer to as splitting hairs. You've split a lot of hairs to get down to that point, but that was kind of my point, is if you do that work, even when it feels like splitting hairs, once you do it, it's not much work after that. In the beginning, I know it's hard. It's hard to go calculate all these numbers and learn all these things and think about it. But once you do it, it's not like you spend an awful lot of time on any of this stuff anymore, right?
No, I'm pretty anal about my paperwork, so I spend way more time on it than what the average person ever needs to.
Right.
But it's half an hour a month.
which is pretty minimal when we think about it. I mean, that's not much work at all. But over doing this all the time, like I said, there's nothing you and I can do to make any significant change in your numbers anymore. And that's where you want to be in business.
Yep. Unfortunately, a lot of my changes with my new route here, I'm not really happy about. I don't normally call on a Monday because this is normally my day off.
You're right.
Here I am working.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm only 30 miles from home.
So wait a minute, but this is kind of a good lesson, and we talk about this a lot. If we have to choose, this is my take on this. If we don't have enough time to focus on everything in our business, then I'm always going to default to expenses. And then if I still don't have enough time, I'm going to default to my couple of biggest expenses, fuel and maintenance. I'm just going to focus on those. And here's a good example. You did everything right when it came to revenue. You focused on one single lane for over a decade, right?
Nope.
You built relationships.
Already,
Yeah, you've built relationships. You understand the lane. You know the rates. You are an expert in that lane, and you've built good relationships. There wasn't much, just like everything else, there wasn't much more you were going to do on the revenue side. And yet, what caused the problems you're dealing with right now? Your revenue changed, and it was completely out of your control.
the market. You know.
There was nothing you could do to stop what happened. You couldn't have given anybody any better customer service. You couldn't have known more about it. You did everything you could do, and you still took a huge cut in revenue. Is there any way possible that something could have happened that would have made your expenses go up by as much as your revenue went down? And my guess is no. There's nothing that could happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we went back to $6 and $7 gallon fuel, of course that would, basically double my fuel cost. But
right.
I got fuel surcharges, so it doesn't matter at the same time.
That's kind of my point. This is why I put more faith in controlling my expenses than I do increasing my revenue. I want to work on both, but most people put too much emphasis on the revenue and not enough on expenses.
Yeah, and I think when we argue online, and Joel had this argument a couple weeks ago, people always seem to think when we say focus on expenses and, cost of operation and having an efficient truck and don't worry about the rates, we're not saying go haul cheap freight. When we ask the question, what is cheap freight?
Right.
We're not saying, have a cheap truck so you can haul cheap freight.
No.
It's you have to haul whatever the market supports. You can't control a rate.
Yes, that's it. That's the whole point right there. And I don't know how to convince anybody if they believe that they really can control the rate somehow, and that if you focus on expenses, it's because you want to go haul cheap freight. No, we've never ever said that. I don't know why people assume that.
We want to be protected when the rates go down, that we will not lose money.
Yes, exactly.
That's the point.
Right. Yep.
So, but I had to call for with Scott, and I don't mean any negative towards Scott, because I think his intentions are very, very good.
Absolutely.
He's
no doubt.
trying to make a suggestion
right.
to improve your show. So, just hypothetically here, let's pretend we did a survey, and let's say you got a really good result of 8% of your listeners actually responded.
That would be a really good
which would
result.
Be a very good response to a survey.
Right. Yes.
Let's say 30% say, I love this AI talk, want to hear more about it. 30% say, I hate this. If you keep talking about it, I'm going to shut your show off.
Mm-hmm.
40% are just in the middle, don't care.
You just
now make a decision on that information.
You just explained exactly why I run my show the way I run my show. There's no other logical way to do this. And I've tried to talk about it in the past. I am huge on you have to provide value to your customers. And I know that's why he's so frustrated. He thinks that he's giving me a way to provide more value to my customers. He's really trying to help. I get that. And he's getting frustrated, and I was trying to help him not get frustrated because I'm not going to change. Because I've talked about, of all the different businesses I've run, this by far is the most difficult because I don't ever know what my customers really want. There's such a mix. Some people will never listen to Tuesdays. They don't care about truck maintenance. Some people will never listen to Wednesdays. Some people absolutely love Fridays. I've tried to offer a lot of different things that might appeal to a lot of people within trucking. No matter what we talk about, I try to always bring it back to trucking. But you can't run a radio talk show based on the listener's opinions. You just can't. Because what if I just said, you know what, I'm never doing health again? Too many people, that was the big one. I talked about it for a year. I got death threats. I can't count how many emails people, I'll never listen to you again, that damn health stuff. But look at how many people we've improved their lives because of it. Look at how big of a part of our business it's become. But had I listened to the feedback, I would have never gone down this road. I almost didn't. Luckily, and who did I listen to? I didn't listen to the listeners because I didn't have a whole bunch of people telling me, oh, you need to do health. We really want you to. I wasn't getting that. Kim was the one that pushed me. I listened to my own employee because that seemed, and it still took her a year to convince me to do this, but I'm glad I did. I don't make these kind of decisions lightly, and I'm not going to do it on AI. I'm not just going to start bringing in people to try to figure out who the experts are, because I would just confuse the audience. I do that work in the background. I go through multiple different people before I ever bring somebody on here as an expert, unless the topic just isn't that big of a deal anyway. If it's not that big of a, let me throw one out there that I just don't think is that big of a deal, but I've been covering it lately, truck parking. Hell, I could ignore truck parking forever. It's just not that big of a deal to me. Somebody comes along with a free market solution, which is what I've been talking about a lot. Yeah, I partnered with them pretty quickly. We brought them on the air. What's the danger of that kind of a partnership? Or maybe I get some information wrong, big deal. But something like health or your money or now AI, I can't take those things lightly. So I'm either going to have to really put a lot of work into trying to understand AI, or I'm just going to mostly ignore it and do what I've been doing. Here's some news in AI. Here's where I think it's going. Pretty general stuff, because I just don't want to do that work. It's important, but here's another reason. Most of the time, if I'm going to do a deep dive into something and really put in the hard work, there has to be a way that I can help people make their life better with that information. My fear on AI is I could do all the work I want, and yeah, I might find some ways that, if a truck driver uses AI, it's going to make their life a little better, but I'm much, much more afraid of the downsides of AI.
And one of your phrases is ask better questions.
Yeah.
So right now, if you had an expert on and they said something that you don't know if it's right or wrong or what direction it's headed, you can't even ask a question that's a good question.
That's it. That is absolutely correct. I can't. Right. You're right. I don't even know what I don't know. And you're right. I don't know enough to ask a good question. And then, like I said, there are AI experts who understand AI. I'm not all that interested in that. That's way over my head. I don't think I need to clog up my brain with all that information. If I ever go look for experts on AI, it's going to be an expert in a specific use of AI, which is very different. And I've listened to some of these guys. I was just at conferences, and I made it a point to go into the sessions on AI. And the more I learn about AI, the more I learn I don't want to know about AI.
Well, you made the statement to get away from technology unless you want to go live in the woods. Well, that is my dream.
Oh, it's kind of what I'm doing.
I'd love to go live in the woods and get away from most technology, not all, but
I will tell you what my biggest struggle is.
That's my dream.
I know. Here's my biggest struggle. I just spent 3 days out in the woods on the property, and no technology other than my phone was playing music in the greenhouse. That was about the extent of my technology today. And it wasn't on me. It was just sitting in the greenhouse playing music. Other than that, no screens, no technology. I was outside almost all day long, all 3 days. I immediately start to feel better. All that work I did on the stress protocol, none of that works as good as just getting outside and being active and getting sunshine and grounding and not staring at a screen and moving and lifting and doing all the things I do when I'm over there. My biggest struggle right now is I could just retire and go do that. And it is really, really tempting. What I'm trying to do instead is find a way to just really minimize the time I spend on the business. Not give it up completely. I'm going to still do the show every day. But last week was a good week for me. Last week When I was done with the show, I went outside. When, if I had coaching, I would do the coaching, I would do the show. After the show and coaching, I did nothing else. I was done for the day. I'm just going to be moving that way. And I have come to the conclusion that we will never be optimally healthy if we can't get away from a lot of this modern stuff a lot more often.
Yeah, and what a great way to end your week last week. I mean, Friday's show is always good. One of my more favorites, in my opinion.
Yeah, me too.
But then you had Ken Berry on.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how long it's been. When you said, well, we haven't spoken since before COVID.
Doesn't that seem crazy? I know. Yeah.
Well, time has flown. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. The show with Ken was excellent.
That was a really good hour.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Hour and 20 minutes. But
yeah, it was supposed to be an hour, but I couldn't stop. All right, I've got to run.
So,
we have our guest here.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
And you know what? Since we have her here, we can, since this is my show and I got to run my show the way I want to run my show, we can bring our guest in early. No point in having her sit there and listen. I want to introduce Megan Earhart. Megan, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. Excited to be on today.
Yeah, you're talking about a topic. This will be the first time on this show. We cover a lot of topics on the show. We're all over the board, from health to personal finance, everything wrapped around trucking always. But we haven't really talked about this topic much. So you are the Executive VP of Relay Payments, and you've been in the industry. You've been around trucks a long time. Why don't you tell us your history?
Yeah, I have been. I got addicted. I think that's the best way to say it. It got in my blood back in 2009. I actually got into the industry in 2007, but went on my first truck in, actually it was probably February of 2010, but got exposed to it a little bit before that. I was at Pilot for 15 years, had 8 different roles there. And during the merger with Flying J, got the opportunity to spend the majority of the merger prep with the trucking side. So with trucking, with logistics, with the fuel supply. And I spent 15 hours on a truck in the cold in Louisville, Kentucky, doing everything I could legally do. And got absolutely made fun of, hurt so bad the next day because it was a fuel truck and I was lifting the hoses and I was moving everything, and it was wild. And by the end of that, I called my husband and said, I think I found where I'm going to be. I'm going to be in trucking, and continued to do different aspects of that, from the logistics to running the fleet to being in the sales organization to IT work. And then about 2.5 years ago, came over to Relay Payments. And at Relay, just the easiest thing I can say is that we modernize payments for trucking and logistics. And we're really focused on making things better for drivers, for fleets, for brokers. And so it's a really natural fit with my history, and excited to be a part of it, the industry, while also being able to do things to help the industry and modernize the industry.
Excellent. I love that. We have been hearing a lot in this last year, especially about freight fraud, double brokering scams, companies stealing MC numbers and stealing freight, or just stealing the money and never moving the freight. There's all kinds of freight fraud going on, and that's gotten a lot of press. The government's talking about it. The 2 load boards are working with technology to try to fix it. I'm hearing some things on the fringes about fuel fraud, but not a whole lot. So what's going on with fuel fraud? Tell us what that issue's all about.
Yeah, so
Uh-oh. Megan?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can now. We lost you there for a second. Go ahead.
Okay. So it's always happened, whether it be third party where there's a skimmer put into a pump and it pulls from the mag stripe, to a first party where a driver hands over their card. What we've seen in the industry really in the past, I'm going to say 4 years, is the first one, the third party fraud that I mentioned, has just exploded. And it's happened various different ways. Obviously, I won't talk about exactly how we know it happens because no reason to give ideas.
There you go.
But it's definitely happened and exploded in a way that it's been a really bad time. I listened to some of your past programs. I heard you guys talking about it earlier, and just it's hard out there in trucking. Trucking's always been hard, but it's really rough the last 18 months. And so in the past, when there might have been 1 or 2 fraudulent transactions and a small fleet caught it, they could live through it. What we're seeing now is those transactions, they can put a company out of business because it might take them 30, 60, 90 days to get reimbursed for that. And they've got to pay the rest of their fuel bills. They've got to pay their insurance payment. They've got to pay their truck payment, their trailer payment. And so it's escalated to a point where it's putting small fleets out of business. So when we started the company 5 years ago, the focus was start with the lumper transaction, spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours on a dock and figure out how to be out of it. We were able to do that. We then moved into fuel, and I could knock on wood. I have to. I'm not even a superstitious person, Kevin, but I am superstitious about this one.
Okay.
We have been out of stealth mode for just over a year on our fuel payment platform, and we have not had a singular transaction that was fraudulent. Not one.
Wow.
So what we are doing in the background with algorithms, how we developed it, how we worked with carriers, we haven't seen any. And so we have customers coming to us saying, I can't survive if I keep having fraud. Get me on the system. We have others that say, hey, my buddy just got hit. I'm not going to be able to live through it. Can you please take me on as a customer? Like, absolutely. Yes, we'll do that. And then we have others that are just really focused at making things more efficient, and they don't want to have their admin staff have to be worried about the cost. So I think an episode you did earlier this month, maybe it was last week or the week before, you were talking about how trucking companies were trying to find administrative efficiencies. Where can that work? And we have a lot of people coming to us saying, hey, we don't want to chase lumper receipts. Hey, we don't want to chase fuel theft. Like, forget the cost of the fuel theft. We just don't want to have the time of having to chase it.
Right.
And so we're growing our customer base that way as well.
So what has been your experience as far as the smallest fleet size that benefits from your technology and your services?
Well, you were one day. Owner-operators, we have plenty of one-truck fleets.
Got it. Okay.
All the way up to the largest of the large.
Got it. And the reason I ask that is we definitely have our sweet spot, and we stay in our lane, and it's really about 20 trucks or less. Yeah, and primarily we're really that company that has always focused on the one truck, one driver. That was really our model. We ended up with small fleets more through we helped guys with one truck succeed enough, and then we helped them buy their second truck, and they grew a fleet, and they just kind of stuck with us. Our accounting software that we have really, we're working on something, but we want to get it to where it'd be really good for that 20 truck fleet. Right now, it's really not. It's ideal for 5 trucks or less. We want to get it to where it's really ideal for 20 trucks and less. So we always want to know, do these issues affect small companies? And clearly this does.
Yes, it definitely does. And when we are talking, you've been in the industry long enough. I have. Every good trucking company started with one truck.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they
yep.
love to tell the stories
Yeah.
of when I was one truck and what they did to build their business, the ebbs and flows of this industry that they survived and thrived through. And that's why we do have the ability to work with one truck fleets. Because one, near and dear to our hearts of, you never know what they're going to build to. And two, even if they just stay a one truck fleet, they're out there working really hard. And our respect for drivers and our respect for those owner operators and those business people that are out there on the road trying to figure it out every day, we want to make their life better, right? Because if we make their life better, if we make their life easier, it's one less thing that they have to focus on during the day.
Exactly.
Because my goodness, they're going to get yelled when they go to the dock, right? They're going to have issues with their dispatcher, even if their dispatcher is a family member who's at home that's handling it. And so what we want to do is be a part of a solution, so it's one less thing that they have to worry about when they walk in to make a payment or do a payment at a pump for fuel with Relay. We want them to say, okay, one, I know what to do. Two, this is going to be easy. And three, I don't have to worry that I've got to go check my card for the next 2 weeks to see if I've gotten scammed.
So is Relay a fuel card that I use for purchases, or is it a technology that I can use any of my current ways of purchasing fuel?
Yes.
Okay, I like that.
Yes. So we are a digital fuel payment program. We also do lumpers. So we have that product as well, but everything is digital, but we can do everything that a classic fuel card can do. So that might be a direct negotiated discount with a merchant, or we have done our own discounts with merchants that especially owner operators like to take advantage of and be able to use that. So whether that be at Yesway or Maverick or Cochran's down in Georgia, they can go in and use discounts that we've already negotiated. Or if they found a discount direct with a merchant, say Pilot, they can do that as well. They can apply that just like they can on their classic billing card.
Got it. Okay. Are there other things we need to be concerned about with this whole fuel process other than, I know you mentioned card skimmers. Is there anything else we should be watching for? And what kind of advice do you have for small carriers to start to protect themselves against this?
Great question. One of the things when we talk to the smaller fleets, all fuel cards have the ability to do policies. And I think the small fleets underestimate the ease of use that policies will allow them to also allow them to be protected. So when we even meet with a 10-truck fleet, a 5-truck fleet, we say, hey, we're going to communicate this out to your driver, but don't just have it turned on, right? Like it's in the Relay app. We have the ability to lock it down. Everything is geofenced, but make sure that it's turned, that to use it, they have to put in a driver number, or they have to enter a truck ID or a load number, something that's an identifying character that allows the system to be even more protected. And I think that's one thing that smaller fleets are like, I'm running too hard. My drivers aren't going to get it. They're not going to understand. And I think that that's one thing we really push on our conversations is do a little bit of security and planning up front so that it does protect you even over and above, as well as getting your drivers just used to those kinds of things. You don't have, those customers that use us for lumpers, they don't have to get the 3 a.m. phone calls to get the fleet card or the fleet check number.
Right.
They don't have to get that approval. It's all set up for them, but it does require 30 minutes up front to say, hey, I'm going to allow a relay code transaction at lumpers to be used up to $500, but if it's only $350, I'm not going to have to go chase that $150. So I'm going to put that up a little bit. I'm going to set that policy in a different manner. And we spend a lot of time educating carriers for that. And then what's slightly different about us too, Kevin, is customer service is our foundation. We answer the phone in 30 seconds, but we also will go in and we provide a concierge service to drivers to make sure that they know how to use the system, that they know how to download it. We send them videos. We talk to them on the phone. After their first transaction, we'll call them and make sure that it went well. So we really are white glove concierge, whatever you really want to refer to it as, to every size fleet to make sure that they have a great experience using us. And while it doesn't specifically answer your question on is there anything out there with fraud that we should be thinking of, it actually does, because it allows them to set up their system in a way that protects them even more and allows them not to have as much driver turnover because drivers understand it and the admin staff understands it.
Got it. Okay. One other thing you mentioned, and I just realized I used to talk about this a lot, and I'll bet I haven't even mentioned this topic in probably a decade. I've been on the air a long time. This used to be a fairly common topic. With small fleets, I used to have to warn people about how you can make sure your own drivers aren't stealing from you. Used to be a fairly common thing. A driver would just be at a pump, and he wouldn't even necessarily give the card to somebody else. He might just stick the hose in somebody else's tank and pump fuel. We used to talk about that a lot, and I don't ever hear about that anymore. What is that kind of stuff still going on?
Yes, it is.
I mean, when I just asked the question, I thought, well, what a dumb question that was. Of course, it's still going on.
No.
But I'm wondering why we don't, it used to come up a lot, and I just realized we haven't talked about that topic on the show in years.
Well, let's talk about it.
Okay, let's.
So it definitely exists out there. You and I have been in the industry long enough to know he or she who has the driver wins. And when drivers are needed and there's a distinct driver shortage to handle all the freight that's out there, a lot of trucking companies will sort of, I don't want to say have a blind eye to it, but just is the juice worth the squeeze, right? To get that out there and to lose another driver, and it's so costly to have to train drivers.
Yeah.
And to deal with driver turnover. So I think a lot of times it probably hasn't been talked about because it's something that can be overlooked, and it's more important to keep a driver. When you sit down and you do the ROI on it, it's different. It is much more something that people are paying closer attention to, I would say probably in the last 9 months. And there's so many more ways to protect a trucking company now than there were 10 years ago. So what we do is when we have a customer that's really concerned about it, we say, set your policy super strong. Okay, they cannot even get the code until they break the geofence. Then once they do the geofence, what is their average number of gallons that they need for the last 60 days? Like if they send us a file, we'll do the math on it. And we'll say, okay, you can set it at 10% above the average or 20%. You're going to get more phone calls, which usually we're trying to avoid. But set the policy super tight on the number of gallons that they can get in a day or the number of dollars that they can spend on a day. And then you're just going to have to answer the phone more.
Yeah.
What we have seen with our customers is the ones that are very worried about driver fraud with fuel is that they will set it really tight. They will watch it for a few months, and then they recognize that our system protects them so much that they really don't have that issue anymore, because that code can only be used once. It's not like a card.
Got it.
So
Okay.
yes, you can toss the nozzle over, but you can't give somebody else that code and they fuel on it. It's a one and done. It's a one and burned.
Yeah.
To where they can't use it again, and there's a time period before they can even request another one. So we've really put those checks and balances in place, but at the same time, we've made sure that if a trucking company wants to make it really stringent, they can do that.
Got it. Got it. I like that. All right. Well, I certainly appreciate you joining us today and helping us understand this. How do people find more information on you and your company?
Yes, so they can download the app out of the Android store or out of the Apple store. Can learn more at relaypayments.com, or like I said, we have a great customer service department, and they can call and ask for any information. It's 1-877-735-2910.
Fantastic. Megan, thanks again. Great information.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. And to all of your listeners, you guys be safe out there.
All right. Take care. All right. We're going to get back to the calls. Let's go to Oklahoma. Paul, welcome to the program.
Howdy to all the Fokkers out there. F-O-K-R. Yeah. So when you were on the phone with Scott there, I was thinking of a T-shirt you were wearing one other day, and it said "Breathe, motherfucker."
That would have been. He was very passionate. There was no doubt, and I can relate to that because I get that way too. I talk over people. Yeah. I got to get my point across. So I know where he's coming from. I was just trying to help him understand. As passionate as he is, I'm just as passionate about doing it my way.
Yeah, that's why we listen. Well, that's why some of us listen.
Well, exactly. So, and that's kind of my point. And as long as enough people are listening and enough people are supporting us and buying things through the store and getting our subscriptions and joining the CMC and the group code, as long as enough people do that I can keep the lights on and pay the bills, then I'm happy, and I'm going to do it my way because I'm happy doing it my way.
There you go. Yeah. So, with the AI stuff, if Elon Musk is worried about it, I think it's probably worth worrying about. But I know nothing about it, so I ain't going to worry about it. I'll let Elon and all those other smarter people worry about it.
I have got mixed emotions about it. It's not that I don't want to know, but in some ways I don't want to know because I feel like this is going to be one of those topics that we have so little control over. It's just not going to matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's above my pay grade. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's 11 years today since I got on this truck that I'm in, and 1,342,846 miles on it.
Nice.
Last year, rebuild engine though. Last year, my maintenance costs for truck and trailer, auto transporter, for those that are not aware, was 29.1 or 29.5 cents per mile. So far this year, I'm at 24 cents per mile for maintenance and tires.
Oh, good.
And my 90-day average for fuel, I'm on 5.54. And at the end of May, my cost for fuel was 60.1 cents per mile. So I'm pretty happy at that.
Absolutely. In your operation, those are
62.5.
Those are good numbers. Yeah.
Buying the new trailer actually seems to be saving me some money because
excellent.
I took it to a place and put the angle iron on the axles, and I'm pretty close to 100,000 miles. And my tires, they have worn down, but they don't have any funky wear in it. So
yeah,
the angle iron on the axles is definitely well worth spending that little bit of money.
Absolutely.
Because I only put it on the outer end as well. I didn't put it in the middle.
Yeah. No, good stuff. Hey, you've heard me talk about the show Alone.
Yep.
There's a new season. And then last year they started Alone Australia, and the first one was absolutely awful. I watched 3 episodes. I couldn't watch it anymore. It was too woke. And the place they were doing it was like hell on earth. Why they would ever go to a place like that? It wasn't. I mean, all of the places they go are extreme, but at least they're extreme and beautiful. I mean, they're places I'd like to be. This place was extreme and awful. Like it was just, it was somewhere near Tasmania or on some island. It was just really, really nasty. The new episode of Alone Australia is on, did they call it South Island off of New Zealand? Would that be the right South Island?
South Island in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's where they're doing it this time.
You got the North Island and the South Island. The people that were born in the South Island, they call it the mainland.
Got
it. There's only about 20%. I think square miles. The South Island is actually bigger, but there's only about 20% of the tougher people live down there. That's what they all claim. There's only about, because if you like winter and mountains, that's where to live.
Well,
Jim Sluter would like it.
From what I could see, it looked to me a lot like Alaska.
Yes, there's a mountain range that runs down the middle of the country. And if you go down there in Milford Sound, right down the bottom, I did it with my wife. You go out on the boat tour, and they get a lot of rain down there. On an average, it'll rain like 330 days of the year.
That's exactly what's going on. Everything is wet all the time.
Yeah, and waterfalls galore. And even when you're in the boat, like this is not just a little dinghy. This is a good-sized passenger boat, touristy passenger boat. And the cliffs, they're so steep where it goes into the water, the boat can pull right alongside the cliff, and you reach out and put your hand on the cliff because it's dead straight, and there's that much rain down there. They say it's about 1 meter, so 40 inches of fresh water that sits on top of the salt water.
Interesting. Yeah,
it's the rainfall capital in New Zealand.
It looks like a tough place. I mean, they have some people that, have said they have never, ever had a problem starting a fire, and they are struggling with fire down there.
Yeah, because everything's wet.
Everything's wet, yeah.
And it's wet. And it's wet all the time.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah, because there's only like 20-odd days of the year that it does not rain down there. So
yeah, now the good news is there seems to be plenty of food. Like this is one of those where
plenty to drink.
Yeah, no worries about water, but and plenty of food. Like people are already, shooting all kinds of stuff, and one guy almost got a moose. That would be a big one. But there's lots of beaver. Beaver are actually really good in the wild because they're one of the few wild animals that has a lot of fat. So if you can get a beaver, that's a good thing. So, but it's been interesting, and so far, I've only watched 1 episode of the Australian version, but I liked it. It's much better than the last one. So we'll see. But the American version this time, they are 140 miles, I think, 145 miles north of the Arctic Circle. This is going to get really, really rough quick. I mean, they're there, in the first week they're there, temperatures are already in the low 40s.
Yeah. And then another thing that happened the other day, I think it was Thursday or Friday last week. So there's no road or bridge that goes from the North Island to the South Island. So you either fly or the trucks, they go on the Inter-Island ferry. There's a couple of companies now that do it.
Okay.
But the Inter-Islander, which is run by the New Zealand Railways, the government.
Yeah.
the ferry, I'm guessing the pilot had to go and do a drug test because he actually ran it up on the beach.
Oh boy!
It didn't damage it apparently, but it run the bow. It's like stick the boat into the shore, and poof, he run it right up onto the beach.
Uh-oh.
If you just Google inter-islander ferry South Island, it'd probably be the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I'm stuck on the.
Yeah.
He run it right up there, but
that's bad.
Yeah. So, but I don't know what the hell he was doing, but he's definitely grounded. I think they got the boat.
He may not have known what the hell he was doing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he went to pee in a cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, I'll keep on trucking.
All right, good
Thank you,
stuff. Talk to you soon. Let's go to Alberta. Colin, welcome.
Hey, how are you doing today?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, one thing I find really interesting about your show from a listener perspective is for a few moments of the day, I can kind of make it my show. I can call in. I can bring up what I want to talk about. So I didn't actually hear this thing about Scott, so I'm going to have to go back and listen to it. But it might be your show. But for a couple minutes, we kind of get to kind of join you at the helm maybe a little bit and bring up what we want to talk about. So if there's something somebody wants to talk about or a topic they like, well, just throw it out here. And so if I want to talk about the Edmonton Oilers playing hockey tonight in Game 7 for the Stanley Cup Final,
we'll talk about it.
Done since 1942. Edmonton came back down 3-0, and now it's tied up, and someone's going to win the cup tonight. If I want to talk about that, well, I can, and you didn't turn it off, and you haven't hung up on me yet. So I really like that part about the show.
Do I love
every single topic and want to listen to everything? No, but whatever. That's just part of it.
Yeah. Let me take that one step further. That is the one thing that would make me go research a new topic. I've done it many times in the past. If I start getting calls about something and I don't know enough about it and it's interesting to my listeners enough that I'm noticing a pattern, then I'll go do it. I get almost zero questions about AI. In fact, when I talk about it, if you've noticed, after that first week where I really talked about it a lot, I keep it pretty short because I don't think there's all that many people interested in it because I don't get any questions. I don't get any calls. I get very little follow-up. So I just don't see it as much as I'm interested in it. I'm not interested enough to do that kind of a deep dive and make it a regular topic on the show because I don't think most people care.
And, I'm kind of curious about AI, but, I have other options. I can go into my podcast browser and type in AI show, and I can find someone that'll talk to me about how you sift through 1 trillion data points and you create an algorithm that brings out the 100 billion that you want your program to deal with. I don't even really know what that means, but apparently a lot of AI is telling your program what data to use and what data to throw out. So a human actually gets to choose, okay, I don't want this part of the data package, and then you can create algorithms that decide of the value of each whatever. I don't get it, but it's all about, it's a lot about data mining is what it really sounds like.
Well, and
here's
the example. Here's the example I've tried to use, and I don't even know if it's a valid example, but it's valid in my mind. The way I see AI now is kind of the same way I see human beings. It's a clone of human beings, or it's a clone of a group of human beings or a mindset, but it is still just like a human being in that I could bring in 5 experts on any topic and we could claim they're all experts. They could all have 30 years experience. They're going to have very different takes on this topic. There's probably a bunch of things they will agree on, but then there's a bunch of things they don't agree on or they do differently. That's what humans are. I mean, we use our own experience to filter something and then create our mindset around that. Well, all I see AI ever being is just another human being that can think a lot faster. But it is still going to, their opinions, that the answers they give us are still biased. horribly biased. And then I got thinking about it.
Well, they were created by a person. Somebody decided, oh, you have 100 million data points about blonde ladies, and I only want the ones that are like over 6'11", and so it's like, oh, blonde people are all tall. Well, no, they're not.
Right.
That's just what you thought it said, right?
And even if we give it access to everything, every data point in the world, and even if it could understand it, so what? All of those data points were created by human beings. So it is still going to, the answer it gives, like I said, you ask it a nutritional question, and I know exactly where it's getting all of its data points from. And it's wrong. It's just wrong. Because we know so much of what we know about health and nutrition is wrong.
Yeah. There was a sci-fi movie a long time ago. I think it was Spaceman, maybe, and the alien ship. It came and it started watching the news really fast, and all it found is that humans start wars and they kill everybody, and so they're evil. We need to destroy them.
Right.
But then he had to actually learn the other side. Oh, then he saw a flower, and he saw a bird, and he saw these other things, and then it was like, okay, so it isn't just like, yes, we do murder each other, but that's not all we do. We care and we love, and we have puppies, and we like fish, and sunsets are beautiful, and rain clouds are scary till it's over and there's a rainbow. Like all these things kind of we put together. And then I can't even remember why I had an original reason why I called.
Business numbers is what it says on my screen.
Oh, so I got a friend, he's up here in Alberta. Their operation is they haul frac sand. A lot of off-road, really crappy roads, getting towed up hills with dozers and stuff. Super, super, super hard on the equipment. And so they're actually trying a thing out. I think they're in their second month maybe, that instead of beating up, and these guys drive like older, well-maintained, 2005, 2009, 2012 trucks that they really like. And their maintenance costs are just through the roof. Like things like fenders rattling off just from getting beat up by these gravel roads.
Right.
So they actually went and a couple different operations up here. These guys, they went out, they rented brand new Volvos with the, I think a few of them are using that, the I-14 or something like that. That has the really low crawler gears because they're, they're all Super B haulers, 140,000 pounds or more. And the jump, so the payment, the rental payment, they took that number, and they didn't have a payment before because their trucks are paid for. But when you factor in the rental cost and the fuel savings, they literally basically have the equipment for free. Like
Interesting.
They're saving so much money in fuel and the fact that they don't have to repair the truck. If something gets broken,
so
they take it back, someone else pays for it, or they just give them a new truck to drive.
So they're doing what we would call a full service lease. They're leasing the truck, but it comes with full service, meaning everything gets repaired.
Oh, yeah. They'll tow it out of the bush on a flat deck and give you a new one.
So this is interesting to me. And here's why. I have said for years and years and years, if you are in the business of being a trucking company, 1 truck, 10 trucks, 1,000 trucks, whatever, it is insanity to me to do a full service lease. And here's why. But this is maybe an exception. The reason is if somebody else owns the truck, then they have to be making profit from owning that truck. Or why would they do it?
Yeah.
So why would I give up the profit of owning trucks when that's my business? That's what I'm supposed to be really good at. I'm supposed to be good at speccing the right truck, buying the right truck, operating it the right way, modifying it a certain way, maintaining it a certain way. That's what I do. To me, it's like, why do I want to run a trucking company and not own any trucks? Now I'm basically
this is where they're at, though, because this is kind of a new
I'm going to
thing.
get to that.
You know what?
I'm going to get to that.
They're probably going to buy new trucks.
Right.
They're going to replace their trucks because the math makes sense, and then they'll just be putting more profit in their pocket. right now kind of trying it out new. Like instead of just jumping in and spending another $200,000 on a truck or whatever it would be.
Well, here's the other thing.
Lease them for now, look at the math, and then make the decision, right?
Yeah, and that makes sense. And my thought was, I wonder if the leasing company really knows what they got into. Are they charging enough? Do they understand the severe duty? And are they charging enough, or did they kind of screw themselves on this? That they're going to spend so much money maintaining these trucks because it's such a severe duty that they may not make any money.
They might have to swap, and they know what they're doing. Like it's full. They were up front. Like you have to. There's waivers and there's certain insurance they have to pay for it because it's off road and but yeah, I think they're into like maybe their second month. I don't know how good they're keeping his numbers, but when I hear more, one of the companies they've been doing it for a little bit. My buddy I think they're their second month in, but you have one truck, you spend $20,000 just on blowing out airbags and fenders,
right?
Tires,
right,
and everything.
And those
take that money,
those are things.
He'd have $15,000 more profit in his pocket. By not repairing his own truck, right?
No, I would love to see more of these numbers if you can get any of them. And as this goes on, I'd love to hear more about it because this is pretty interesting. I have said that, and I want to go back. When you talk about airbags, fenders, those are parts that we could put 1.5 million miles on a truck and never replace. Those are not common parts to replace. So that is a new additional cost just because of the severity of this. I have said that other than the body style, with all the aerodynamics and all that stuff that they tend to put on these, when it comes to engine and driveline, I now believe that Volvo should be the premier heavy haul truck.
From what I'm hearing so far from these guys, it sounds like that you're right. They're getting better fuel mileage, like just, I don't know how close they're tracking, but just two guys in two trucks kind of doing the same run. Really quick math, they're actually doing quite good. There's a bunch of fuel savings already they're noticing, but I don't know how close they're tracking all the numbers. That actually leads me my final question. I'll let you go. How does profit gauges work for Canadian companies? I know some of your tax forms wouldn't really make sense up here, but as far as the numbers, like it's just math, like the numbers would all be the same, right?
So we have to separate two things, and we tend to lump these two things together. We have accounting and we have taxes.
Yes.
We need accounting to be able to do taxes, but taxes are not accounting.
Yes.
That's really where a lot of people get confused. There's only one report in our software that wouldn't work for a Canadian, and it is our tax report.
Okay, so it really is just that you're like 99% an accounting program and
correct.
One form for taxes, basically. Okay.
And all it does,
that's kind of what I thought. So.
Yeah, all that one form does is it makes it easier for some accountant who doesn't understand the tax rules in trucking, because we have some pretty specific rules with depreciation and per diem. And so we took our data and the report is actually the tax form that an owner-operator would use in the U.S. to report their expenses.
Yes.
So we just populate their numbers into the form so you know right where everything should go. You know how depreciation got handled. Other than that, our business report, you would hand it to any accountant in Canada and they'd be able to do your taxes from that.
So you could just take that one report at the end and they would basically just apply it to the Canada Revenue Agency's data or form and then hold your breath for them to reassess you over and over again.
Yeah, and you don't even have to print it out. You can email it right out of the form to your accountant.
Yeah. Okay, I will let my buddy know. He's been an owner operator for years and always worked under somebody else, and he got kind of pushed in the direction of you're going to do this all on your own now, and he's doing good so far. He's
good.
he puts his money away monthly for maintenance, and he's slowly building up a little kitty that gets sent when things break. But at least he's kind of got a good thing going. So
yeah,
Shane, if you're out there, keep doing it, buddy. You got this.
there you go. There you go. And if you do use our
Kevin.
software, call me with the numbers. I'd love to see them. Let's go to Texas. Austin, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What's on your mind today?
I got a question about brokers. So a couple weeks ago, I did this load for a broker, and it turned into being a very, very bad experience. Basically, we screamed at each other on the phone. A lot of things were said that shouldn't have been said to each other. I thought I was disrespected as the shipper or the receiver, and I tried to let my feelings be known, and they didn't believe me, and I couldn't get my point across to make her believe me. And we kind of mutually agreed. I didn't agree with that, but she agreed that she doesn't want to use me anymore. Which, after I kind of reflected on it a few weeks, I feel like I've calmed down from it. I feel like she has, and I feel like I need to touch base and kind of apologize in a way, but I still feel like, she's not ever going to believe that I was disrespected at her shipper or her customer, and I can't get her to believe that. But I don't want to not use her again.
Okay. And that was going to be my question. Is this somebody that you see value in continuing the relationship? And it sounds like you do. And you already know what you need to do. I mean, I can hear it in your voice. I can hear it. I think you're just looking for me to kind of verify it. You're right. I would waste no time trying to convince her of what went wrong or how you were treated, because you're right. She's either not going to believe it, and she has, in some ways, she has a reason not to want to believe it. It might be one of her better customers, and right now we're all nervous about customers. We're all nervous about losing out to somebody who is just about ready to go out of business, and they're just doing everything they can as cheap as they can just to survive. And you can lose customers to companies like that. So my guess is she's probably nervous about losing her customer. So she's probably not going to get on your side here and go fight them over this. In her opinion, it'd be better to keep her customer and lose you. You're saying it'd be better for me to keep her than lose her. Then that's fine. So yeah, go back and rekindle the relationship, but I wouldn't go backwards. Just move forward on this one.
Right. I mean, there were things that I did, like I forgot a pallet. That's my fault. I should have not have done that. But we all make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Bad mistakes.
Right.
But it was a mistake. I should have called her when I left. I didn't. I was in a hurry to get out of there and get to the next location to pick up, because it was a 2-stop to pick up.
So
I
here's
was in a hurry. I didn't pay attention.
Here's what you can do, and you're already doing it. You're doing it with me, and I would just do the same thing with her. This relationship is important to you. You've decided that that's good. Do with her what you just did with me. You really didn't focus on the disrespect or what. You admitted, I made a mistake. Had I not made this mistake, things would have gone better. That's the way I would approach this. And this could end up turning into a really good relationship for you.
I feel like, I made a mistake, but I'm never going to get her to believe you.
Correct. So don't try.
Never. Because I definitely want to touch base, kind of configure or kind of hash it out in a good way to make sure we don't hate each other, because I don't want to hate somebody that.
No, and
it was also a union.
I've always been.
I don't really.
My attitude has always been, even if things go completely wrong and I don't want to continue the relationship, or it may not continue, I still want to end it on a really positive note. And occasionally opportunities come back around and they make more sense. So, we don't want to burn bridges. This is a pretty small industry. If somebody totally rips me off, I'm probably just going to move on. And if it was here, nobody really did anything wrong. I mean, the broker didn't do anything wrong. You made a mistake, but it's no big deal. The treatment from the dock or whoever it was in shipping, or it may not ever happen again. It's not really going to matter. Your relationship, and this is a good lesson, that our relationship is not with the shipper. If we used a broker to get this freight, the broker is our customer. Now, we can treat their customer good. That's just smart to do. But this is one of those situations. It's why we don't focus on the shipper. They're not our customer. You focus on this broker because this broker may have some other opportunity that really works well for you.
Yeah, and that's what I've been seeing by just browsing
right.
the agency codes. I want to make sure that I make amends.
Yeah, good. No, and I like your approach. You just apologize for them and admit the mistakes you made, and then just move forward from there.
Okay. And would it be worth it to like send them something or send her like a gift card or
sure.
something?
Absolutely.
Call her, or...
Yeah, absolutely. That always goes over really well. It's not, some people go, oh, well, you're just bribing somebody. No, it just makes the point that this relationship is important to me. And that's a good thing.
Right. Okay. Would it be worth it to send it and then call her, or call her then send it?
Either
really
way. Either way. I might send it first because we did have a problem. So let's kind of, send it as kind of a little bit of a peace offering and then move forward from there.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, yeah, I'll get that done. Well, that's all I kind of had. I just kind of wanted to see what you would do or what.
Yeah. No, I like I said, your instincts were right on this. You're already on the right track.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Talk to you soon. Let's go to Illinois. Gerald, welcome. Gerald, are you
Hello?
there? Yep, there you are. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. What's going on, Uncle Kevin? How you doing?
I'm okay today. It's been a good Monday so far.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a good Monday. Well, I haven't heard really everybody, no complaints, just for maybe a couple of those people, but
yeah, no big deal.
We're satisfied with what you're doing.
Good.
So
good.
You're all right.
And
I wanted to ask and see how
the people who aren't satisfied with what I'm doing aren't listening anymore, so who cares?
That's right. Yep. No, I wanted to ask about how your sleep was. I don't think I've heard you talk about that very much.
So overall, since you asked kind of big picture in general, I'll give you the history.
Yeah.
Most of my life, I never, ever had any kind of sleep issues. Like nothing. Like when I laid down in bed, within 10 minutes, I'd be asleep. I didn't get up during the night.
Yep.
I slept long, woke up refreshed. That was my whole life. Even when, and everybody listening realizes this, if you drive a truck for a living, you're going to have a screwed up sleep cycle. It's almost impossible not to. Even when I had dedicated runs, there were times I had daytime single runs, I had nighttime single runs, and I had team runs.
Yeah.
And I had to fill in on all of them. So one week I might go in on Monday and do a morning run. On Wednesday, I might be pulling a midnight dispatch. And on Friday, I might have to work Friday and Saturday going to Memphis as a team. It was a really, really screwed up schedule. And yet I always slept good. That never, ever messed with my sleep. Even going from morning to night, I might get tired. It's a big change. A couple days and I'm recovered. Everything was perfect. When that changed was when I got the midnight show and I was living on the East Coast. And I had to do the show at midnight. And I typically, back then, And for most of my life, I go to bed early and I get up early. Like I will go to bed at 8:30 and read maybe till 9 or 9:30. And then as soon as I set the book down, I would go right to sleep. And then I would get up at about 4:30. That's still a really good night's sleep, and I felt great on that schedule. Now, what happened when I got the midnight show is I would go to bed at 8:30 or 9. I would have to wake up at 10:30 or 11. So I got a couple of hours sleep, and then I would have to force myself to wake up with an alarm, which I never use alarms. Because if I just tell myself, you need to get up at 4:45 tomorrow, I will wake up within 10 minutes of that time without an alarm. No matter how tired I am, I've always been that way. So, but I couldn't force myself to wake up after an hour and a half of sleep or 2 hours. So I had to use an alarm. So then I would need caffeine because now I have to sound reasonably intelligent, and I'm sleepy and I'm tired and I don't feel good after just getting 2 hours of sleep. So I would consume caffeine.
Yeah.
Now I didn't finish the show till about 2:30 in the morning. And then it would take me about 2 hours to wind down and fall asleep at about 4:30 when I'm normally waking up or when I want to be waking up. And then I had a business to run, so 8 o'clock in the morning, and I got to be working. So I kind of trained myself to sleep in 2-hour shifts. And for some reason, that was years ago. I can't break that. No matter what I do, I probably know more about sleep than 99% of the people in the country. And yet I can't fix my own sleep. And I'm really to the point now where I think the problem is it's just our modern life. We've switched. It's something as simple as all the light bulbs we used to use, the incandescent bulbs, they were very, very soft, warm light. And now we use these super
the LEDs,
bright, harsh
LEDs.
Yeah, they're so white they're blue. I mean, they're so cold they're blue. I mean that's and we're surrounded by. I have one shining right on my face right now for the camera. It's a bright LED light for lighting in here, and we're everywhere we go now. It's all this LED lighting. We are surrounded by electronics now, everywhere. We carry a device around in our pocket that receives 3 different wireless signals all day long. And we're staring at that screen all the time. And we're wrapped up in social media. And there's 24-hour news everywhere you look. And everybody's talking about the news all the time. And I am convinced that I will not be able to fix my sleep if I stay working in the modern world the way I do right now.
I was going to tell you a story. A little over a year ago, back in May, me and my wife, we was in a really bad accident, and she passed from it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So talk about messing your sleep,
your
sleep pattern up. It was, but I'm starting to get better with that.
So one of the things we have identified, one that modern life is very, very stressful to the human body. Our fight or flight response was not designed for this world, and it doesn't work well in this world. It keeps us under constant stress all day long. What we've noticed is people are just barely holding on. I mean, they're stressed, they're not sleeping good, they're using a lot of caffeine to wake up and alcohol to go to sleep, and they're right on the edge. And if they have a traumatic event like you went through, it can be devastating to their health. And it can be really, really hard to recover from that.
Yeah.
We know a lot of the things you should be doing. And I talk about them. I've tested them. I've researched them. They work. But I have to say they're not foolproof, and they don't work all the time. And you have to put a lot of effort into it to get any results at all.
Yeah. Now, like when you sleep, do you like it really cold?
I love it cold. Like you can't make it too cold
Yeah, I
for
do
me.
too.
As long as I've got enough blankets. You know, if it's going to be 68 degrees, let's say, I need a sheet and a light blanket, and I'm fine. And I'll probably keep the blanket off most of the night and just have the sheet. If I could get the
Yeah.
temperature in the room down to 50, I'll take it. Give me a flannel sheets and a big heavy comforter, and I'm fine. If the
Oh,
temperature
yeah, you're good.
is in the 30s, give me a good cold weather sleeping bag, and I'm fine. And I like it. I mean, like I said, you almost can't make it too cold for me as long as I have something to keep me warm.
No, I like it about 61
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
night.
I could be very, very
Yep.
comfortable at 61. And I would have a sheet and probably like a heavy comforter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and going back to what you was talking about, the electronics, the electric vehicles, look how much, I think you've talked about that too, of how much they're giving off.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Look at all the
crazy.
technology that's in our cars now. I mean, what have I heard?
Mhm.
There's like 87 computer chips in a truck now, or whatever the number is. It's too hard to remember. There's so many of them. With the cab of a truck that we spend all day in is flooded with electronic signals now. So we
Yep.
can't get away from it. When I do get away from it, just for a couple days, going out to the farm, turning everything off, staying outside, I'm in my bare feet, I'm getting lots
Yep.
of sunshine, lots and lots of activity, I can start to see the improvement. But the minute now today, I'm right back in front of the lights. I'm staring at screens. It's real
Yep.
life again. And
You can tell a difference.
I can absolutely tell a difference. Yeah. Now Lisa and I were just talking about it yesterday. Some point within the next 2 months, probably, we will take a week off. I don't take a lot of time off
Yeah.
from the show, but I'm going to. I'm warning people ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
And that week, I may turn my phone off completely and not use it for anything, not even music, nothing. The computer's getting turned off. I will spend all of my time as far away from technology as I can. And I'm positive by the end of the week, I'm going to be feeling better.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, Kevin, that's pretty much all I had, my man. And
All right. Well, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Florida. Cole, welcome.
Hi, Kevin. How are you today?
Doing good. What's on your mind?
Good. Well, I had Angie send you over some numbers. I had sent that over a few weeks back when I called in, but then I got to a shipper and I had to go.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But I think it's for May.
Yes, I'm looking
and I wanted to kind of go over here. I feel like I'd like to start bringing on some drivers, but there's just so much stuff going on in my company that it's hard to know when things are looking right. I'm in. Oh my gosh! Turn that off for a second.
Yep, it's a trucking show.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to have on, but sometimes, golly, these people won't shut up.
I know.
Where was I?
Bringing on drivers.
I'm kind of encouraged by the market so far. I normally run flatbed. That month was all flatbed.
Okay.
Over the last week, I have a van. I've been trying to test the van market, see if it's okay.
All right.
But I don't really know what I want to talk about on the numbers because it's been a couple of weeks since I looked at it.
Yeah, well,
Do you see anything that
I do. And the fact that you gave me why we're looking at the numbers helps a lot. I tell people all the time, do not even think about a second truck until you really understand what you're doing on the first truck and you've got your revenue up and your expenses down and all those things. Looks to me like you're there. I mean, for today's market, these are absolutely solid numbers. You've really done a good job keeping your costs down. One number slightly high, but I bet we could dig in and figure it out. And it's not even anything I'd be too concerned about. So let's just go over the numbers in general.
Okay.
You're doing 206 a mile in revenue, all miles. That's nothing to write home about or get too excited, but it's solid in today's market. And what really impresses me is that even with just a kind of a mediocre rate, that, like I said, nothing to get too excited about, you are still profiting $1.18 per mile. Well, paying a driver, 90 cents a mile today would be a really high wage, especially just in a van. You're not a private carrier, that kind of thing. I mean, that would be a really high wage. It would still leave plenty of profit to have a second truck.
Remember?
Yeah, I get it. So we'd have to, if you're going to do van, we'd want to watch the numbers on that. But the fact that you've kept your expenses down is very encouraging, because to me, that is the trick. Keep your expenses down and it opens up more opportunities. And you're operating the truck on all miles at 88 cents a mile. That's pretty impressive. And that tells me that, yes, if you decide that you want to have drivers, you're ready to start working on it.
Now, the concern is with the what you don't see in that report is the other costs that are associated with other parts of my company that isn't that truck. That's only the cost associated with that truck.
Okay.
For example, I own 2 trucks.
I was just going to say, how many trucks do you have?
Yeah, I have 2 still. I used to have like 5. I don't remember how many I had, but we're down to 2. And I have 2 flatbed trailers that I own. The trucks are paid for and the trailers have loans on them. So I'm kind of in a spot where I need to either sell a trailer and a truck or find someone to use to utilize that asset. So I'm not
here's my take
spending all that money on insurance and
here's my take on this, because I have a different answer for you than I'd have for somebody else, which is almost always the case. If you were calling me and saying, hey, I'm really thinking about going out and buying another truck and trailer, I would be very, very hard on you at that point. I'd be pushing hard. Are you really thinking this through, that this is a tough market? This isn't a time to make big financial decisions. But that's not the case here. You've had drivers. You understand all those issues, and you already own the truck and trailer. So there's very, very little risk in putting a driver in it. You're already paying for those things, and they're just sitting there generating no revenue. You could sell them and just move on.
Right. That's what I'm struggling with.
You could, but why not just put a driver in there and give it a shot for a little while? If in a couple months you feel like, look, this just isn't worth the hassle, then go sell it. If you didn't have them, I would be trying very hard to talk you out of buying them. But in this case, I'm kind of going to try to talk you out of selling them. Put a driver in there. Let's see what kind of revenue we could generate.
Because the problem is that I have this cost of the equipment, whether I put a driver in the truck or not.
Exactly. That's my point.
The only thing I will be increasing
is revenue.
Is I'll be increasing a driver wage.
Right.
Well, on the cost side, I'd just be increasing a driver wage and 2 fuel bills. But so long as the numbers can support the fuel and the driver wage, that's what I'm kind of looking at here.
Well, your fuel cost is on this truck, but you said this was flatbed all month, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you have a 36 cent per mile fuel cost on a flatbed. That's outstanding. 36 cents a mile. That's really low.
Right.
Yeah. Now, your maintenance cost is slightly high at 23 cents, but we could dig into that. There could be lots of reasons for that. You may have done a couple big repairs that the longer we go, the lower that's going to be per mile.
There was a couple of reasons. I had a $1,400 APU bill.
Yeah,
my diesel APU radiator got a hole in it, so and that's something that doesn't happen that often.
Right, that's what I mean.
The APU radiator.
I see the number in here. It's $3,000 for the month. That's probably a high month. That's probably not the norm, and that's what I figured. I'm going to ask about this one just because I don't know. I don't think it's any big deal. But what do you put under office?
Office manager, a salary.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And load board.
Okay. That makes sense then, because it was
So I've
9
hired
cents
my
a mile.
sister to do back office stuff. Huh?
Got it. Okay, and that makes sense to me then. But normally, when I see 9 cents a mile for office expense, I've got to ask to see what it is.
Yeah, that'll be like QuickBooks
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay.
That'll be the Let's Truck stuff, and then the load. I have 2 load boards: Let's Truck Stop and DAT.
Got it.
A couple of other subscriptions in there, and then my my office manager's salary.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure it's the salary that's the biggest part of that. But even that, it's not a big deal. You can afford it.
Okay. So nothing's looking scary in there?
Nothing at all. In fact, it's the opposite. Okay. You have gotten your numbers to the point where I want people to get, before they even think about adding equipment, and your answer is even easier because you don't have to add the equipment. You already have it. You're not taking any real additional risk here.
Right. Well, and that's one reason I'm out here testing with the van, because the one thing that bothers me about hiring a driver is the flatbed.
I get that.
There's just so many things that go wrong.
Right.
That is directly related to the driver: tarping, ripping tarps, and all that extra cost of having to buy new tarps,
or not tarping properly and damaging something that needed to be. No, I get it, and you are correct. I would much rather put a driver into a van operation than a flatbed.
Right. So that's why I'm out here testing. So I will be calling probably sometime the end of this week or next week and kind of giving some updates on the van.
Good.
Just to kind of see how the van market's going.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. But I think that was the main question for today, anyway.
You are in good shape. Here's the nice thing about a question like this. You've put yourself in a situation where there's no wrong answer. If you just said, look, I don't want to deal with it, I'm just going to sell the equipment. Well, good, sell it, because then your costs go down and your bottom line looks even better than it does now. On the other hand, it's not wrong to say, hey, I already have the equipment, and I've had drivers before. I know what it's like. Let's just put somebody in this thing and make some money. So there's no wrong answer here.
And our office salary almost wouldn't change much,
right?
Because that's already set up for paying employees. Oh, and another thing that goes in office, I think, would be my accounting fee. So I have a CPA that does our payroll.
Okay,
because I'm an S corp.
Right.
So she has to do the payroll on me and Farah, the office manager. So we already have payroll set up. So that would, of course, be increased with one more guy, but it wouldn't really. I mean, it kind of would. Our costs would almost stay the same.
No, you're right.
One more person.
Yeah. Technically, you could probably add 2 or 3 or 4 drivers, and your office manager isn't going to cost you much more. So you've already got that in place too. That's kind of why I look at this, and this one's kind of a no-brainer for me. Give a driver a shot.
Yeah.
In 2 or 3 months, if you just hate it or it's not working, then sell the equipment.
Right. What do you think about the market itself? I mean, I'm kind of encouraged a little bit. We're in a spot where it's really bad technically. However, for a small carrier like me, we kind of get into this spot where the van market right now is being flooded with freight because all these mega carriers aren't bidding out for the year. You know what I mean?
So here's what I think about this economy. I've never seen anything like it. So I don't know how to predict where we're going. And the analysts I follow don't really know how to predict where we're going. We can look at freight data and say, oh, no, look, we're starting to recover. Rates might even start going up here in a little bit. We're seeing more volume. We're seeing more tender rejections. That's a good sign. The freight numbers are actually kind of encouraging right now. What I worry about is the overall economy. And I worry about the things that we're not seeing any signs to tell us anything. Like, why is the stock market still doing good? Here's another goofy statistic I just heard this morning. We are at, how did this go now? It's about real estate. We just set some kind of 30-year record, and yet that market is still strong. And the real estate market right now should not be strong, but it is. The stock market right now should not be strong, but it is. We've got out of control inflation, which no matter what the news says is not getting better. It's just getting less worse. That people need to understand. The news reports things as, oh, look, it's getting better. No, it's not getting better. It's just less worse. There's a big, big difference.
Yep.
But they sell it to us as things are getting better. So, and when I talk to analysts who don't want to write about this kind of stuff, they're feeling the same way. They're just confused and afraid that we're missing a sign somewhere, and we're worried about an overall market crash even. You know, the one analyst, and I know this guy is a doomsday kind of guy. He's always been that way. He's always predicting crashes. Most of the time he's actually wrong. But when he's been right, he's been really right. And he is predicting a far worse real estate crash than what we had in 2008. And yet it doesn't come.
Right.
It's not happening. Could have happened a year ago, and it didn't. Why not? Why are home prices still holding up, even though we don't have a lot of buyers in the market? It's really just you wouldn't want to be a real estate agent right now because there's not enough activity to make any money. You don't really want to be a buyer right now because I'm afraid we're just buying in at the top right now. But actually being a seller right now is not a bad thing. I am considering, in fact, I may work on this afternoon. We've spent the last 10 years accumulating properties out here in the gorge. And I have some pretty nice properties that I'm just sitting on not doing anything with. And then I have some properties that could be good vacation rentals if I put some money and time into them. I'm thinking about selling. I'm thinking about putting the majority of my properties up on the market. I'm not doing anything with them right now. I can't imagine that they're going to keep going up, not with all the run up we've seen. And if we do have a big stock market crash, well, then later on, a couple of years from now, I'll just buy stuff back.
Right. Yeah, good point. Yeah. You know, that one thing.
Uh-oh, Cole?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, now you're back. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying one thing that I like and I've learned from you and your program is if you keep that cost down, even if things kind of collapse, we should still be able to turn profit. You know what I mean? When we're kind of competing with the mega carriers, so to speak,
right?
We have much more capability of controlling costs than they do. So
far more.
At a certain point, unless the entire economy just crashes, you know, I mean, and disaster happens, we have to be able to run at a profit if the mega carriers can.
And if you think about the things I talk about, and I know people probably, I'm sure there are people that turn off the radio when I start talking about prepping. Because it's one of those topics I get threats. Oh my God, I can't believe you're talking about that again. I don't talk about it a lot, but when I do, I do. And here's the reason. Because I believe what you just said. I believe it completely. That if we want to stay in this business and we keep our cost under control the way you have, nobody could put us out of business. You just can't. I can haul so much cheaper than you can that I will still be here. I may be working really hard for not much money, but I'll be paying the bills and I'll be eating. And that's all I care about in a real bad economy. If I can pay the bills and eat, I don't care if I'm going backwards even, I'm staying in business. And if we have an economy, then I know as an owner-operator, I'm going to stay in business. Somebody has to move the freight. If you don't move the freight, then we will have a collapse. So as long as somebody's moving freight, it's going to be me. And this is the way you do it. You keep your costs so low that it's impossible to put you out of business. On the other hand, the only thing I could see that would cause that not to work anymore is such a major financial collapse that it's not going to matter. And in that case, I just want to survive this. I don't want to be dependent on the
Right,
government
case,
because the economy crashes.
Right. I mean, at that case, we would not be trucking. We'd just be trying to survive.
Exactly.
So
right.
then business doesn't really matter anyway.
And that's why the kind of, preparation I talk about, isn't really, it's focused somewhat around money, have some cash, but this whole idea, I've even talked about this. I'd love for one of these experts to tell me why I should have physical gold. Because the answer is always going to be, well, when the economy crashes, you're going to need it to barter. Yeah, well, in the beginning, I don't see that as a very good option. First off, I've got to go find somebody who has what I need. And now we have to come up with some sort of value for this gold. And and what if they don't want gold? If I have stuff like food and bullets and things that are going to help me survive, I don't want to trade those for gold. It's just too hard to go use the gold to get. So why don't I take the money and instead of converting it to gold, why don't I just buy all that stuff that I'm going to need in an emergency? Isn't that easier?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
And now if for some reason out that I did diesel and I have a bunch of canned turkey, well, I like that. That's easier than gold.
Yeah, exactly. And the gold might make sense in a where the dollar, crashes. That would be about the only thing gold might save you against the dollar, because if gold could always be transferred back into other currencies,
right?
Then it's a monetary thing. You know what I mean?
Right. And I kind of get that, but we're really talking about worst case scenario at that point.
Right. Right.
And
at that point, no monetary value has.
It's not
money
going to
doesn't have any value at all. It's things.
Right. Right. That's kind of my point, is that if we need the gold, it's worst case scenario. And if it's worst case scenario, money itself no longer becomes important in any form. It's having the stuff you need to survive. So why don't we just invest our money in the stuff we need to survive?
Yep, that's a good way to put it. Yep, exactly.
Kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'll try to call back later this week or next week and give you some updates on the van market, see how that's going to work, because that's going to be kind of the deciding factor here.
Right.
I was fairly certain the flatbed would work. It's much harder to find drivers in the flatbed sector. You have to pay them more. You've got more risks on everything. In the van market, it's pretty simple. But I imagine we're going to be about 20 to 30 cents down from that 206.
If we're 20, let's do some quick math. If we're 20, that'd be $1.86. That's still doable. With your numbers, if that revenue dropped 20 cents to $1.86, you'd still be okay. And your costs are probably going to go down a little bit. Pulling the van, we should be able to get decent. Now, I don't know about the other truck, but if the revenue,
well, it would be this truck. So
okay, so we could count on better fuel.
The truck
economy.
I'm driving would be right.
Right. So
yes.
I would say the basement here is if that rate starts to drop below $1.80, that's probably going to be the critical time.
Yeah, and it might in the van market.
It could.
Right now, the van market average is $1.50, so that's the problem.
I have a lot of people in vans still doing $2 plus. They've got good relationships. They've got good freight. It's been holding up for them. So $1.90, $1.85, you'd still be okay. If it gets to $1.80, we'd have to rethink this. But the good news is the numbers are going to tell us. You're tracking the numbers. So at some point, we're going to look at the numbers and go, hey, you know what? This isn't working.
Right.
But you haven't lost
that's what I'm
anything.
Out here testing, so we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. I'll look forward to talking to you here soon. Let's go to Wisconsin. Damian, welcome.
How you doing, Kevin?
Good. What's on your mind today?
So I got a lot, man. I've been listening to you since 2017. So I got like 7 years of stuff, but obviously you don't have 7 more years to go through it.
we have,
but yeah,
we
I
have
found
17 minutes.
Third shift work. Say that again.
We have 16 minutes. I'll
It's
just
right
make
on.
you the last call of the day. You can talk about whatever you want.
Okay. All right. I gotcha. I just want to say thanks for all you do. You're very knowledgeable in a lot of things. Jack of all trades. You're a master of some. There's a couple critiques that I just wanted to quick throw out.
Sure.
As much as I love everything you do and say, there was one that got me really kind of hits home a little bit. My son got diagnosed type 1 diabetic back in 2019. And for the first year, when I heard you say we can cure diabetes, it drove me nuts. I do understand you're talking about type 2. But to hear it was just kind of like cringeworthy a little bit.
Well, let me add to it then. We can absolutely cure type 2 diabetes. We can make life for a type 1 about 20 times better. We can extend their lifespan by a decade at least, and we can make their results way, way better by doing all the same things too. We don't have to do anything different for a type 1 than we do for a type 2. It's all about the food they eat.
Correct.
The less insulin a type 1 needs, the healthier they are going to be.
And we monitor, my son's 13 now. He was diagnosed at 9. And since then, I've been listening to your Wednesday program a lot and doing my own research, some Dr. Bernstein stuff. There's that protocol book, API protocol or some Walls protocol or something book that we read.
Yep.
I follow a lot of your nutritional advice, and it's helped immensely as far as keeping his insulin down. And when we do eat, we don't eat the standard American diet. We're not 100% to where you are. Some of it is cost, but we have been able to. He's on a CGM. He's on a Dexcom. I covered it out of pocket. Insurance won't cover it. It does get to be a little pricey.
I can't believe insurance won't cover it for a type 1. Really?
So here's what it does. I cover it out of my pocket for the first until I hit my deductible. It does go towards my deductible expense. So by the time I hit July, because it's so expensive, like right now, I already hit my deductible. Now I'll pay 80%.
Okay, got it.
20% of the cost. So
got it. Okay.
It doesn't cover it, but it does go against my deductible. But yeah, I get a kick out of the doctor. So my wife's, just to give you a little bit, my wife's 5'11", 4'11". I'm 5'8". And when we go to the doctor will say, well, your son needs to eat more carbs because he's not growing. He's in the 25th percentile of height and weight. I said, you do realize I'm 5'8", and she's 4'11", man. Come on.
Well,
so it's ridiculous.
Let's talk about how wrong everything about that was, starting with what you just said. We would expect your children to be smaller. I'm 5'5". My mom was 4'10", and my dad was 5'8". So I was never expecting.
They're going to be in the lower percentile.
Yeah, exactly. But even if we had that right, which they don't, we shouldn't be concerned about it. The last thing you would want to do if you want to grow a taller human being is feed him a bunch of carbs. That's what made us shorter. We can go back in history and look. We used to be taller. We used to have bigger jaws.
I laughed when the dietitian.
Unbelievable.
Well, they wanted us to meet the dietitian. My wife refuses to see him now. And based on this whole one time that I went with, because of my shift, I don't always get to go to the doctors. And one time I was able to get off and I wanted to go to meet the dietitian. And again, he was like, oh, we want 180 grams of carbs a day. And I said, why? Right? You always ask, that's your favorite question, right? Why? Why do you want him to eat 180 grams of carbs a day? His roundabout way said he needs carbs to produce glucose for his brain development. He needs carbs for brain development. I said, your liver produces glucose too when the brain calls for it, right? And he shut the fuck up right there.
Yeah, good.
That was the end of the conversation.
Good, because what you did was you reminded him of something he should have learned in medical school. Even though they don't spend a lot of time on this, he should have at least understood that. That is a basic fact about our biology. That here's the thing. If they want to go down this path of, well, your brain has to have carbs, it has to have sugar. It does. That's correct. But if you understand, we will burn through our glycogen stores, which is our sugar. We can only store about 2,000 calories. We will burn through that in about 24 hours, 48 at the absolute most. How do people then live beyond that if they're not eating? How does anybody fast for 3 days if by the third day they should die because their brain doesn't have any glucose? How do they answer that? If they believe you have to have carbohydrates for your brain, how do you explain somebody not eating, in one case, for 362 days or whatever that record was I just talked about the other day? He didn't eat. No glucose, no carbohydrates at all for almost a year. How do you explain how he lived then?
Well, they can't. They won't.
Right.
Well, they could if they took the time. They just didn't. I mean, it was ridiculous to go there. And since then, my wife, when we had that conversation, she's like, "That's just useless."
Now,
So we don't even go back to see the dietitian.
Do you listen to or read books?
Say that one more time. I don't understand. Read book?
No. Do you listen to books or read them?
Oh, not all the way through. Like I said, I've read through some of Dr.
Okay.
book. I've read through some of the Walls Protocol. I haven't read them fully from front to back because they're just kind of.
Well, at some point they get a little too deep. One of them that I would really recommend you listen to is called Rethinking Diabetes by Gary Taubes. And the reason is it's the one book that I've read that you really learn a lot about the history of type 1. Almost all of us talk about type 2 almost exclusively, to the point where, like you said, I wouldn't even distinguish. I just got tired of distinguishing. I'm talking about type 2 because that's all I talk about for the most part, unless somebody specifically asks me. Most books focus on type 2 because I think the statistic is right now only about 7 or 8% of diabetics are type 1. It's actually fairly rare still. It's more common than it used to be, but type 2 has exploded and type 1 really hasn't. It's gone up some. So it's only about 7 or 8%. But this book focused on the history going all the way back to like the 1800s on type 1. And one of the most Rethinking Diabetes.
Rethinking Diabetes. I'm writing that down.
Gary Taubes is the author, and I'm going to try to get Gary on the show with us. He's written a couple other really good books. If you've ever heard the discussion about Ansel Keys and how Ansel Keys screwed the whole thing up, and Gary Taubes' book was the first one that kind of really talked about that. I think that's where most people probably heard it. His first book was called Good Calories, Bad Calories, and that's where he talked a lot about that. This book was just really one of the best books I've ever read on diabetes, and a lot on type 1. One of the things I found absolutely amazing in there was if you get type 1 and there's no insulin, it's a death sentence. You're going to die. That used to be a very, very common thing. You got diabetes, that was a death sentence. And then we developed insulin in the early 1900s, and that saved a lot of people's lives. But they actually showed they kept a type 1 diabetic alive and actually thriving, doing really well with no insulin. The only thing was
We try to do that, like with the food.
Right. And you want to get as close as you can. In reality, what fascinated me about this was the only way they could keep a type 1 alive without insulin, the only macronutrient they could eat was fat. Even protein was too much.
Right. I was just going to say, we tried to do is like say 0 carbs. We've done that with him, but we found, over again, we've been doing this for almost 5 years now.
Right.
That we found out that protein will actually have a rise too.
It will.
Protein will convert some of it to sugar over time.
Right. And
so we can't completely go carb free or just protein.
Right.
Fat to him is still, because of his age, to eat a lot of fat is hard for him to taste and feel texture.
I can't imagine
but
anybody
I will say this, I don't mean to
trying to live on pure fat. Right.
He does eat ribeyes now.
Good.
So,
and I can't imagine anybody trying to live on pure fat. It would be a miserable existence. But it was interesting that you could.
Yeah. Well, worst case scenario, if we ever get into the nuclear war scenario and we get into the apocalypse, at least we know we can do it without insulin. It's just going to be gross for him.
Exactly. Right.
Do it.
Right. Yeah. All right.
Well, I'll give you a quick story on, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Never mind. If you got to go, that's fine.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the story about the story about him getting diagnosed. We were on our trip to go visit my dad. So I'm in Wisconsin. We're a 20-hour car ride to New Hampshire to go visit my dad to celebrate him being cancer-free. Went through chemo, lung cancer, cancer-free, Father's Day weekend. We're on our ride out by him. And my wife just says to me, Ian said he has to go to, been going to the bathroom a lot by my mother-in-law's at the time was watching him, and I go, and to give you another little backstory, my brother was diagnosed type 1 diabetic about a decade earlier.
Okay.
So when she said, oh, he's been drinking a lot, he's thirsty, and he's looked a little pale, I called Mom. She said, just have him to pee on a test strip. We get to my dad's house. We talk to him. We go to Walgreens. He pees on the test strip, shoots it through the roof as far as the ketones. Next day, I talk to him. Hey, where's urgent care? Just want to get checked out. We go on a trip, get back to the urgent care, and they stick his finger in. He's 600 on their meter, and he said it doesn't go any higher than that. So they immediately told us to go to the ER. We're first day into the vacation. Get to the ER. They hold him overnight. Transport him via an ambulance to Dartmouth Children's Hospital, and they ask us why we're there. I said, well, we got diagnosed, he's high blood sugar. So they ran some tests or whatever, came back, confirmed the next day, gave us the whole rundown of how to just get him to do the insulin. And I told him, we're on vacation. I'm going home after this. I'm driving back to Milwaukee. She said, don't do that. We'll give you a 24-hour rundown, of course, of how to manage it. You keep doing your trip. And we did. But we thought, my wife and I at the time, when we heard he was type 1, we just cried.
Oh, I'll bet.
Like, oh my God, like our life changed forever.
Yeah.
But kudos to that doctor that said, do not alter your plans for the trip, because that'll kind of, like, he'll remember that. We canceled the trip because
I think that
of
was
you, right?
excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, they gave us a quick 24-hour rundown course of it. They gave us a 24-hour hotline to call them, because obviously that first 24 hours after we got home to get his numbers and insulin was kind of crazy.
Oh.
But then we drove to Canada to see the Niagara Falls. We did a sky tour dinner thing at the top.
Good.
My boys and my wife loved it, and I'm glad we didn't cancel it, because we
Good.
were literally
Good.
on Earth. And I learned a valuable lesson. Next time, transport your own kid. Fuck the ambulance. That was a $3,500 taxi ride.
Yeah,
I'll never get back.
Especially
but we were
in
kind
this
of panicked.
case.
We're like,
No,
oh my God, we don't know. But
you would be. And here's the good news. 10 years ago, being a type 1 diabetic was horrendous. I had a nephew who was diagnosed early, and I watched his health deteriorate, quickly. And that is common with most type 1s. It is when the doctors talk about managing it, that is a horrible way to approach type 1. It's a horrible way to approach type 2, but it's really bad for type 1. You can't manage it. When there is no insulin and you have to give it all, it does a lot of damage. Blood sugar will be all over the board. That does damage.
24-hour day job.
Yeah, it is. And
7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yeah, it is. And you'll never, ever do it the way the body did it. So that's why type 1s have shorter
one
lifespans.
More quick question before you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got one more quick one for you to try to deal with my wife with this. So we do still have we fight a little bit on what's normal and good, or bad and damage. She's now been injecting, or we can get our insulin. So we got Novolog, R, and Tresiba. So you got fast acting, medium acting, and slow releasing.
Right.
She's been injecting or incorporating the R with the Novolog to try to counter the protein, because the protein takes longer to digest.
Right.
And her version of low, she gives him enough insulin that he's constantly, I would say 75% between 70 and 50, and he'll drop into the 40s. And we've already had a scare where my oldest walked in on him laying on the floor trying to get into the garage to get a can of soda. So I try to get her to ease up on the amount of insulin she gives him. She's deathly afraid of the highs. And I don't understand. I try to explain to her, you should be just as deathly afraid of the lows.
Well, she
highs
should be
are damaged over time. And
she should be far more afraid of the lows. Far more afraid. That
right.
is the,
I can't get that through her. I can't get that through her head.
That is the biggest danger of taking any kind of diabetes medication. Is lows can do brain damage. Lows can kill you. And they can kill you one episode.
Yeah.
You could have one low blood sugar episode and die. You could have 100 high blood sugar. You could have 1,000 high blood sugar episodes and never die. It's pretty rare to die from high blood sugar. Type 1, if it's going to happen to anybody, it's going to happen. Right. But that takes time. And yeah, so she should be afraid of the lows. Those are the real dangers. This child needs to eat as low carb as possible. Protein should be moderate, and fat should be the primary macronutrient all the time. You should be getting as much fat into that child as they will handle. As much as they will eat, you should be feeding them that much fat. And that will help you minimize.
Slab of ribs.
Yeah, that'll help you minimize the protein and eliminate the carbs completely. And as close to zero carb, moderate protein as you can get is the healthiest diet for that child. And it's just a matter of practicality.
I'm going to have her maybe re-listen to this episode, because with me on it and you saying it to me, maybe it'll sink in from hearing it from somebody else, because I think she just drowns me out. Because of my brother being type 1 diabetic, he's riding high all the time, and I'm like, look, he's got a dot on his eye that's now blind permanently because of his running high so long. He's got paralysis of the hand for a while. He had like a 2
we don't
years
want to
where
run
his fingers
high
curled up because he didn't manage it.
But we certainly don't want to run low. And my guess is he's running high because he's taking the doctor's advice. The doctor's advice is basically eat whatever the hell you want and we'll cover it with insulin. That's what does all the damage.
That is very true, and that's exactly him. Wholeheartedly. We lucked out with Children's Hospital. I will say this about Children's Hospital is as far as the dietitian sucks, but the doctors there, as far as how to manage it, how to count carbs, how to count the macronutrients, like it gets down into the details of measuring the ingredients in something.
Right.
Like salt or whatever, anything, you just measure it, right? I mean, you can get really fine detail to get a precise insulin dose. The problem with that is it's still a timing issue of when you inject the insulin to when it's going to matter with the digestive tract and how they match up with each other. And that's still hard to do.
No, there's no doubt.
We've been doing it long enough. We can keep it fairly tight.
That's why the more fat, the moderate protein, and ultimately, if you could, zero carb, it's why it works so good, because there's a lot less to manage and screw up. This idea that you can eat whatever you want and then we're just going to cover it with insulin is a horrible idea. I don't care how tight you manage the blood sugar. It's the insulin now doing damage.
Yep. No, it drives me nuts to hear some of that stuff that the doctors come out. But like I said, the beginning part of it, the intro part was good. Got us at least up to speed and going. And then from there, we've just taken what they gave us and with your knowledge and with what we read and kind of got a pretty good handle of it. Other than, like I said, her low part is still giving him too much insight.
2 books. If you could set it up so that you and your wife listen or read these books together, that would be even more powerful. So Rethinking Diabetes, the one I already told you about. And I would also read The Diabetes Code by Jason Fung.
Diabetes Code.
Really, really well written and simple. It is the easiest book to help you understand all the things that are going on with diabetes and why low carb diets work so well, why fasting is really good. But they tell you how a type 1 should be fasting. Jason Fung is really good at keeping things simple and understandable. And Jason Fung is a doctor. He's a nephrologist. Gary Taubes is a journalist, but he does so much homework and so much research that his books are just excellent.
Right on. Rethinking Diabetes. I got it.
And the Diabetes
Code. I appreciate it.
Yep. You're welcome.
Kevin, it was a pleasure.
All right. Thanks for the call. We are going to wrap this up for today. It is 11 o'clock. We will see you back here tomorrow for the Power Hour. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.